No, wait, she is where we do our batting in the morning, so,
I'll move over to.
yeah, you don't have to.
Move wherever.
You can check.
Okay,
If
thanks.
you're here first, get the best seat you got, you can get.
Thanks.
You have all those pictures to shoot?
Okay, I just
He's
printed
got
two.
approximately
and I'll
25
record it,
pictures
so
more.
now we're gonna try to print here. Sorry.
He's got about 25 more pictures.
be seated. Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor.
We are on the record, case number 12 CF 1083A, State versus George Zimmerman. Are we ready to bring the jury in?
We are, Your Honor. If I do a couple of proposed jury instructions, then we can wait a witness, I guess, right? Yeah, we are ready, Your Honor.
State ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's bring the jury in. Good morning. Hi, Shelley.
Present, Your Honor.
Please be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I hope you had a nice weekend. Before we get started this morning and while you're settling in, I'm going to ask you my questions. If your answer is yes to any of my questions, please raise your hand. During the weekend recess, did any of you have any discussions amongst yourselves or with anybody else? No hands are being raised. Did any of you read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you use any type of internet device to go on the internet to do independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology? No hands are being raised. And finally, did any of you read or create any emails, texts, Twitters, tweets, social networking blogs, or pages about the case? No hands are being raised. Thank you very much. The state may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please report, we call Dr. Hirotaka Nakasone.
Can we have a matter to address briefly at the bench regarding this witness, just for...
If you'll please approach.
Sure, thank you.
raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Warner Doctor,
Good morning, Mr. Monte.
if you would, please go ahead, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, first, how to spell your name, secondly, where you work and what you do.
My name is Hirotaka Nakasone, Hirotaka. Last name is Nakasone. Currently, I'm assigned to the Operational Technology Division of the FBI in Quantico, and he performs a variety of duties as a senior scientist. I conduct a research and development activities for the development of automated speaker recognition systems, and also as a collateral duties I perform on routine basis, voice-related forensic examinations, including speaker recognition, speech analysis, and acoustic analysis of signals we encounter, including gunshots analysis. And lastly, also as a senior scientist, I provide advice, guidance, recommendations for the operational technology divisions and other FBI field office.
Dr. Nakasone, how long have you been in your current position?
Since 2009, as a senior scientist for 4 years, and prior to that, I was also hired in a similar, position since 1996.
Tell ladies and gentlemen of the jury essentially what it is that you have done, how long you've been in this field, and what has made you sort of qualified to hold your current position.
Well, initially, when I was doing my PhD thesis at Michigan State University, I got into this forensic speaker recognition as part of my thesis under Professor Oscar Toshi. And when I graduated with the PhD degree, I taught at Michigan State as an assistant professor for 18 months or so. And after that, I moved to Los Angeles County Sheriff Department in Los Angeles, California, to take up a federal research project for the development of computer-assisted voice identification system. I stayed at Los Angeles County Sheriff Department for 7 years, since 1985 to 1992. And my title with the Sheriff Department was voice specialist. And then consequently, I joined FBI in August of 1992 for the same responsibilities, type of the work I did. And I think I was qualified by the FBI to conduct forensic examinations on the audio evidence in 1994. And ever since, I've been doing this kind of work until today.
Doctor, have you mentioned a PhD thesis. Have you done research in this field independently of just your work?
Yes, my first independent scientific work would be my own PhD thesis. Thesis was titled as a automatic speaker recognition by using deviation spectra. And when I moved to Los Angeles, the research grants was provided to continue my work as I wrote in the thesis under the project name titled CAVIS, Computer Assisted Voice Identification System. Then when I joined the Bureau, I started specific modernization effort of the FBI's technique to do voice identification. Until 1997, since early part of the 1960s, FBI was using so-called spectrographic voice comparison, or commonly known as voice prints. And it was getting to be very ineffective to establish scientific validity because of the subjectivity in the examination involved. So in 1997, I was charged to look into modernized speaker recognition technology. So after that, I initiated a lot of research projects to identify any existing technology viable for forensic applications. I published a variety of papers related to speaker recognition technologies.
If you had to estimate for us how many, I'll call them peer-reviewed articles or papers you've published over the years, what would that number be?
I really never counted thoroughly, but maybe 30 or 40.
Okay. And your as far as your actual work in lab for both the FBI and the other agencies that you've described, how many actual voice samples have you attempted to conduct identification on over the years?
I can give you just a rough idea. Judging from the fact that I handle anywhere from 40 to 80 cases per year, and if I worked for the Bureau, that would amount to 1,400 cases. But since I've been working for more than 10 years or so, my best guess would be probably I have to handle and analyze and written report somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 cases. That will involve maybe 5 times of the number of the voices.
Have you ever testified in courts before as an expert in the field of forensic speaker recognition?
Yes, I have. However, most of the time when I testify in the courtroom, I never testified to the results of the analysis and examination that I conducted. Rather, I was requested to testify in the court to talk about the reliability and scientific foundations of speaker recognition technologies.
And how many times would that be?
Somewhere around 25 to 30 times.
Okay. Would that be both state and federal court?
Yes.
Your Honor, if there's no objection, I'll be tendering Dr. Nakasone as an expert in the field of forensic speaker recognition.
Any objections?
Oh, absolutely none. We
Okay.
encourage the court to accept Dr. Nakasone as an expert. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Doctor, tell us a little bit about, you mentioned the methods that a person in your field uses. Tell us a little bit about what those are and how you go about employing them.
According to the scientific working group for speaker recognition recently formulated, the members identified there are a number of methods used. The first one is known as a automated or computer-based speaker recognition, and phonetic-based voice comparison, spectrographic voice comparison, and then oral or by listening comparison method. And all of those, the methods are being practiced by different scientists who are in the different disciplines. Of course, phoneticians will utilize phonetic approach, and the listening approach might be done by phoneticians as well. And the people who are involved in the development of automated speaker recognitions, they are mostly scientists and engineers and computer scientists with advanced degrees. And they reside in the government agencies, industries, private, not only in the US, but pretty much throughout the world.
You mentioned that there are differences between what you referenced as the oral or listening approach and automated approach. Is that the one that involves the computer assistance?
Yes. Even when a scientist might say, including myself, we are utilizing automated method, there is only underlining routine, which is the listening methods. The computer algorithms, that's a mathematical or statistical approach, is highly complicated, highly advanced, it's fairly accurate, but this kind of technology still must be supervised by properly trained examiners.
Let me start with the idea of what kind of sample you need, or a person in your position needs in your lab, to sort of be able to even conduct an analysis. What is it you're looking for?
As part of the standard operating procedures, what we do at the laboratory first, before we do any analysis, would be to evaluate the suitability of the data. And we check and listen very carefully, and then want to make sure speech sample we have at hand are naturally spoken. It will be devoid of disguise attempt, any evidence of intoxication or effects of alcohol. They must be removed for the analysis. And also we pay attention to the emotional state of the speech. If the person is uttering voice samples with the extreme, happiness, the voice will be too joyous, including lots of giggling and laughter. Those must be removed for the analysis. Sometimes we run into voice being uttered when the person is going through stress or undue depression. This voice must be also removed. And any other unnatural voicing, say like yelling, screaming, or mourning, this type of voices must be removed for the analysis under the standard operating procedures. And when the speech is determined to be natural, then we will check the other aspects of the conditions. For example, the duration must be at least 30 seconds after blank or silence removed. Usually we can do a meaningful analysis if the voice sample is 30 seconds, 1 minute, maybe up to 3 minutes or so. After 3 minutes, the performance sort of hits the ceiling. But when the speech sample, say, drops down to only 10 seconds, 14 seconds or so, examiner has to conclude that the voice quality is not, duration is not really good enough for us to analysis. And then we will also check the amount of reverberation included in the speech. If there is a long time reverberation in the recording, we remove. We do not proceed to the examination. Another thing is that suppose we have two voices to compare. One coming from recorded, incriminating recording, and the other voice is coming from suspect voice recorded in the quiet room, whereas incriminating voice was recorded through telephone line. And if that telephone line has a bad quality, these days, most of the telephone, especially landline, carries decent quality. It can be usable, but depending upon the cell phone type, poor type of cell phone, that distorts human voice. And when we have to confront this kind of disparity between the two voices we are comparing, the examiner is mandated to stay away from further analysis.
So you've talked about sort of some of the factors that affect your ability to conduct an analysis. I think you mentioned that there are variations in what is going on with the speaker in terms of their mental state or their physical state, their emotional state, the way that the speech is expressed. And you were just talking about sort of variables that could go on with the mechanism of the recording, the cell phone distortion and that sort of thing. Are there other environmental factors, the distance between the recording and the microphone, for example, are there other factors over and above just those with the speaker and the microphone that could have an effect?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. The effects of the distance to the voice is also regarded as a something we have to be careful. There are two terms to describe those. The first one is a far field recording versus near field recording. When we typically talk on the phone, our lips are very close to the microphone, maybe an inch away. That's a typical near field recording. It captures our voice very clearly. On the other hand, when the person is, say, far end of the room, and they are, say 10 feet, 15 feet away, we call this voice, when captured by recording system, we call it, far field recording, or far field voice. And far field voice has problems because not only the weakened signal, it has a noise convolved with it, mixed with the noise created by the room, and also reverberations and echoes created by multiple bouncing walls that sort of smears the voice. And another thing is that far field voice tends to have very poor signal-to-noise ratio. Signal-to-noise ratio is the ratio of signal divided by noise plus signal. Say like in this courtroom, the signal level, when we measure it by sound pressure meter, it might give something like 40 dB decibels. And I'm talking probably with the total of about 80 dB loudness, and the signal-to-noise ratio is sort of, it's a logarithmic expression, but when we do a calculation in dB, we just use subtraction. So 80 minus 40 gives me the voice. My voice will carry about a 40 dB signal-to-noise ratio, and that's what you hear. And 40, 20 is 100. Okay. It's more than 1,000 times. My voice is not louder, 1,000 times than the ambient noise you hear. Now, typical telephone conversation carries anywhere from 20 to 30 dB signal-to-noise ratio. But when the person's voice is far field, that would become something like maybe less than 10, 5 or 6 dB signal-to-noise ratio. And that kind of level of the signal is not really suitable for analysis by computer approach. It doesn't preclude human listener though. Human brain or human has better system to analyze that kind of poor signal.
Let me ask you more specifically about the samples in this case, State versus Zimmerman. Back in March of 2012, did you receive some recordings to attempt an analysis on in this case?
Yes, sir. The copy of the report that I have in front of me indicates that the operational technology received from Tampa FBI field office a request to analyze this particular case on March 23rd of 2012.
And how many recordings did you receive altogether?
Altogether, 8 recordings were delivered to us in a CDR, including 2 pertinent recordings in this case.
As far as this goes, what I'm going to focus on now is what we've called or talked about as the Lauer 911 or the 911 call that contains what sounds like a person screaming or yelling. You're familiar with that one?
Yes, I am.
Okay. As far as that call goes, tell me what you did when you got it and what you were able to do with it.
The case was assigned to me to do voice comparison portion, and another examiner was assigned to do something else, but I'm going to concentrate on what I did.
Yes, sir.
By following this standard operating procedure, I listened to the entire recording. It was something like a little over 4 minutes. I want to check my note. I correct 4 minutes to 2 minutes, 34 seconds. And out of 2 minutes, 34 seconds, the pertinent portion was somewhere around 45 seconds, starting from the beginning of the recording until there was a loud noise, almost like a gunshot-like audio event. And that duration was about 45 seconds. We listened to the entire conversation exchange between the female caller and female 911 operator. And when I was listening to those conversation, of course, I could hear the voices going in the background, altercations, somebody is yelling for help. And that, yelling or screaming, let me call it screaming. Screaming goes in and out when the dispatcher and the female caller were talking, and sometimes the screaming comes up isolated from those. But since we cannot really analyze any voice which is stepped over by something else or superimposed with other people's voice, I discounted those in the area and came up with somewhere a little less than 3 seconds. 2.53 seconds of screaming was sort of standing by itself.
So let me make sure I've got this clear, Doctor. There were, as you referenced, in that 45-second portion, there was a series of that, what you've described as a screaming noise. How long total, both what you call stepped on and unstepped on?
Total, if I combine all of those segments, it reached a little less than 19 seconds, 18.80 seconds or so. And of those, 16 some seconds were completely overlapped by other voices, and less than a little 3 seconds, 2.53 seconds, was the only area where nothing else but screaming was coming through.
And what were you able to do with that amount of sample and that type of sample?
We checked, and I have to render my final conclusion. That type of voice sample or utterance is not fit for the purpose of voice comparison, and this is a mandate. And this kind of judgment is based upon the research and also common sense type of understanding among scientific communities.
So you concluded, based upon finding out what you told us about 18 and 16 in about 3 seconds and the type of recording, that you couldn't make a comparison. Am I understanding that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Is there something about the nature of the sounds itself, independent of the shortness of the sample or the other complications that you've already discussed, that also made it harder for you to be able to even conduct a comparison in this case?
In this case, signal-to-noise ratio of that particular screaming was very poor, and that was due to the distance between the telephone set in the premise that female caller was using and presumed location where altercation was taking place. But of course, we didn't have any visual information of those geometric information, but by listening, we could tell that was far-field recording. And there was another slight reverberation was also contained in that screaming.
Doctor, independent of whether you can compare a sample like this to a known sample of someone's voice, which you said you could not in this case, are you able to, what sorts of things are you sometimes able to tell about determining the age of a person who's giving a sample?
It is common belief among scientific communities attempt to guess the age of the person from a recorded voice is rather complicated, and often we can tell, we can approximate, but very often we know people make mistakes. When we hear on the phone someone's voice, say a young man's voice coming through, and I may think, oh, this guy's very young, 20 years old probably, but it can turn out to be 55-year-old talking. Or sometimes I listen and then judge. I think everybody may have gone through this before too in your life. You may think that this man is very old, maybe 30, 35, but he can turn out to be only 18 or 19. And this also depends upon the individual too. So guessing age is a little complicated.
Tell me what you know about, for example, just the generalized parameters of the pitch of a voice and what that means as it relates to ages, genders, and stages of development.
The pitch is, well, let me just define quickly. Pitch is the psychological perception of actual vibrations of a vocal cord. Say like when I'm talking in this courtroom right now, probably my vocal cord is opening and closing approximately 100 times per second. So 100 repetitions of the same thing per second is called 100 hertz. And maybe 120. The average front pitch of the grown or adult male is somewhere around 120 hertz. Now, on the other hand, the average adult female voice has about 220 hertz per second. It's twice as high as men. Now, on the other hand, a small child produce somewhere around 400 hertz on the average. Small children has the highest pitch. Now, these are of course based upon the speech samples while everybody is talking in the normal speech, carrying out conversation. This pitch goes all over the place. When someone in extreme conditions, say like roller coaster ride or a pilot's voice right before the crash to the ground, or somebody who goes through extreme emotional status, the pitch is known to raise way higher into 500, 600, 700 hertz, regardless of the age. And normally, we are accustomed to hear a person's pitch, but there is another phenomena along with it. When we speak, pitch is the baseline. Pitch is sort of a source of energy, but the reason what we hear distinctive sounds from me is not because of the pitch. It's created by resonance patterns created by the tube formed inside human vocal tract. The tube starts from the lips all the way down to the top of the vocal cord. It's somewhere around 15 to 17 centimeters or so. This tube is constantly changing and it creates resonance. And that resonance can be also changed when the person uttering something under extreme emotional state.
Doctor, have you yourself made attempts and actually taken exemplars and been able to estimate the age, or at least the general age of a speaker with prior samples?
It occurred to me, but I decided it was not possible to determine
On this one?
on this particular case.
But you've done that before?
Yes, I have analyzed the variety of voices in the past.
And sometimes you're able, and did I understand, sometimes you're not?
That is true. I have analyzed voice coming from 16-year-old young man against the 20-year-old man. I don't quote the case, but we were able to identify the voice. And in other cases, more often than not, we not recommend to police department or FBI field office, do not try to get voice samples from a young boy who are going through potential voice change. And this puts some sort of very special, unique situations, because depending upon individuals, one person goes through and complete his voice change in a rather short period of time. He may start at 12, he may complete his voice change within a year. But some individual may go through extended period of time before his voice finally gets established.
And that could take as late as how in life?
I can't really quote exact year, but usually voice gets established at age 20, plus minus couple years.
Okay. So up until that time, in your experience, most people are undergoing that sort of change?
That is correct.
Did I understand you to say, too, that one of the complicating factors in determining age is this concept of residence and what phone recordings and that technology does to your ability to accurately determine all that?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Sure. Did I understand you to say earlier that one of the things that affects the ability to, for example, get a better read on the age of the person making the voice sample is when it's a recorded sample that other of those factors enter into the recording? For example, in this case, you've already talked about the distance, the low sound quality, the low sound level, as well as the compression by the cell phone's microphone itself.
The attempt and then accuracy of estimating someone's age by listening to a recorded voice would be about same as listening to a live voice, of course, without looking at the face. There will be no difference between the two.
So you think a person hearing it live would have about the same ability as a person who have heard a recording?
That is correct. If the listener is not really familiar with the voice he's listening to.
And I want to get to that because we've mentioned this already a couple times. You talked that one of the methods that you use yourself is what you call the oral or the listening approach to this, where you tell us a little bit more about what that involves.
There are two types of listening identification. The first type is called familiar voice recognition by listening. And the second type is called unfamiliar voice recognition by listening. The familiar voice recognition happens pretty much every day. I think most of us in this courtroom run into this situation. Say like, when you're in the office and your colleagues, long-standing co-workers are talking around the corner. You cannot see them, but you can tell right away, hey, that's Paul and Joe talking. And this is so-called familiar voice recognition. And another thing is that when we listen to a phone call made by our mother on the other end, you really don't have to wait until you hear whole conversations. It's a couple words. would make you recognize that's your mother. And this is a typical, the phenomenon happens in our life. It seems to be so easy to do voice identification. But when we go to unfamiliar voice identification, we are talking about listening to, say, hundreds of phone calls every day. Suppose I'm a salesman and talking to hundreds voices. And then one of the voice somehow triggered me. Hey, I heard this voice. And then try to compare that voice with another voice I caught in the different telephone conversations. But I don't know this guy really. And this kind of voice comparison or speaker recognition is part of the unfamiliar voice recognition. And also in the forensic circumstances or environment that I'm in and other forensic scientists are in, we are usually given a voice that was coming from incriminating recording from question the voice or in the made in the course of committing crimes. We call it question the voice. And then we will be given also another voice coming from suspects. And I don't know any of those people. And when I attempt to compare those two unfamiliar voices, that's a typical scenario that everyday forensic examiner encounter. And since it's very difficult because examiner don't have in his brain any information stored about the speech features of the voices he's listening to. So the mathematical models or statistics implemented in the computer software must be utilized as assistance to help examiners.
So do I understand then that for unfamiliar voice recognition, which is most of what you do, if you're going to use those other techniques you've described, you need to have the type of sample that you've earlier told us you need. As it relates to just the listening type of analysis, which is, when you have a sample like this, which is going to be more suited for making an identification based on a familiar voice? If we were to have persons familiar listen to it, is that going to be superior, at least for this type of sample, than just trying to do it on an unfamiliar basis?
In this particular case, in my judgment, based upon my experience, it's better done by familiar voice identification by listening only. And as I mentioned before, I haven't mentioned that yet. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
But there is a set of requisites for the familiar voice recognition is regarded, reliable and valid. For example, when we listen to anybody's voice in our life, we intentionally or unintentionally encoding the perceptual features of the person's voice. When he is speaking normally, slowly, excited, emotional, all of these are stored in my brain. And then I also must have an ability to retrieve those features when I'm confronted with a task to compare later voice. And then I gotta have the ability to compare a particular feature generated from later voice against features stored in my brain. So in other words, for this particular case, best approach would be familiar voice recognition by the individual who have heard him in his whole life, speaking, uttering in a variety of conditions, including screaming, yelling, under similar setups.
So do I get what you're saying then is it would be better if you were attempting to, a familiar voice identification, to have someone who has heard the potential subject here under a variety of conditions as opposed to simply, say, talking to them back and forth in a courtroom or a meeting or something like that?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. And that would be about the best approach you could take given this particular sample?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. If I could have a moment, Your Honor. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you. Cross?
Morning, Dr. Nakasone.
Good morning, Mr. West.
Nice to see you again. If I could have this marked, please. I would like to approach the witness.
If you'll show it to counsel first, please.
See me. This is Defendant's Exhibit FF for identification.
Yes.
Are you familiar with that?
Yes, this is my curriculum vitae.
And in addition to the training and experience that you talked about a moment ago, does this contain references to your publications and research and other life experience as a voice expert?
Yes, this lists my professional affiliation. I have about half a dozen of memberships in the technical associations. And also, this lists the award that I received in the past, including FBI Director's Award for the development of automated speaker recognition system. And it also lists the, my current effort in establishing a scientific working group for forensic and investigatory voice speaker recognition. And that scientific working group was formed and launched and kicked off on March 19 of this year. And there are somewhere around 30 to 40 members. Among those, 16 members they are voting members. And the remaining will be advisory members. And bulk of those memberships made up of highly reputable scientists, both in forensic and in technical field, mostly coming from either U.S. government, federal, state, and also academia and major industry who produces speaker recognition technology.
Let's
And
talk about that for just a moment. That's the working group that you mentioned in your direct examination that you're focusing on now is a group of scientists, speech or voice identification, voice comparison experts that have pulled together to meet regularly in the issue of speech or speaker identification?
that is correct.
How was the group started and what is its primary mission?
The concept of this scientific working group was born in 2009 when the interagency symposium was held, and we recognized that there are lack of consensus or integrated or coordinated efforts in establishing common standard operating procedures. And It took about 3 or 4 years before we can actually form and construct this scientific working group. The missions and the goals of this scientific working group includes the preparation and then the publication of the guidance for the practice of the speaker recognition, and then recommendations for research activities, and also legal advice for the practitioners, and also the harmonization of the variety of speaker recognition methodologies amongst scientists, engineers.
And what is your role on that working group?
I am the elected chairperson of that scientific working group. And there are 4 subcommittees underneath of my chairmanship. One is known as a Research, Development, Test and Evaluation Subcommittee. And another one is the Best Practice Subcommittee. And then third one is Interoperability Voice Standards Implementation Subcommittee. It's just called simply Type 11. And then number 4 is the Science in the Support of Law Subcommittee.
As a result of your work with this group, does that bring you in contact with some of the most distinguished voice scientists in the world, including yourself?
Prior to my earlier testimony, of course, I have not spoken to anybody, but lately I've been getting a lot of emails pretty much throughout the U.S. and also across the world that reputable scientists do agree with me in terms of the analyzability of the voices while produced in screaming. And everybody, most of the scientists believe that there is no validity, and therefore results of the analysis would be utterly unreliable if anybody analyzes that voice for the purpose of voice identification by utilizing advanced electronic device or computer algorithms.
Your working group, did you found this group?
I helped coordinate it and succeeded in getting the funding to establish this. Actually, this particular scientific working group are sponsored by the FBI and also sponsored by National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Is the acronym for that NIST?
That is correct.
And is that the former National Bureau of Standards?
That is correct.
Thank you. The funding came from your efforts and is participated, the funding also, there's a funding participation with NIST?
Yes, NIST, the function of the NIST for this particular effort would be administration of the SIG speaker meetings, activities, and remote conferences, and then coordination of the website. And also they provide technical assistance, because after all, NIST is the one who has been providing technical evaluation of the speaker recognition technology since 1996 throughout the world. And they are reputable in terms of coordinating scientific and the blind testing of the performance of technology for voice identification, including not only in the computer domain, but also in utilizing human listening abilities, known as a HASR, H-A-S-R, human-assisted speaker recognition.
Dr. Nakasone, you're talking about NIST's efforts to promote evaluation of these various methodologies that you've touched upon, and so that if somebody has a methodology that could further the speaker recognition industry, they're invited to submit it to NIST as one of their programs evaluation and be recognized by the scientific community. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yes, NIST function, as far as I understand because I have participated since 1998. Every speaker recognition evaluation by the NIST. The goals or missions of NIST, speaker recognition evaluation is promotion of the science, and then evaluation of the technology developed by participants. However, though, they are not really charged with evaluation of the system as applied in any specific areas. They do technology evaluations, but they really do not do yet, as of today, application-specific evaluations. Maybe it's best if I just come up with an analogy, like automotives. We have engines inside, and that engine could be mounted on any kind of cars, and then perform differently. So NIST sort of evaluates performance efficiency of the engine itself. Mm-hmm. But they don't really go up to how this engine is mounted in what kind of body style.
Someone, though, who has a methodology for analyzing voices has the opportunity to submit that methodology in a hands-on trial to test the performance. Is that correct?
Mr. West, can you rephrase the question? I didn't understand.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too sidetracked. I'm just trying to get a better handle on this NIST evaluation program, where those that practice in the field of voice comparison or speaker identification can participate in this evaluation, where they are given samples to analyze that NIST standardizes, and then they're able to compare their performance with others, for example, that may take the same project on.
I think that is about right. It's a blind test. Mm-hmm. And then data are prepared by the NIST, and the participants would never have a chance to look at those data until they were given. Once they are given, they have limited time to crunch the numbers.
As a result of your familiarity with what NIST does and your experience with the working group that you've talked about, it sounds like you are current insofar as what's happening in the scientific community of speaker identification.
I do believe that I am completely familiar with cutting edge in technology and scientific studies.
And if I heard you earlier correctly, there is no methodology or science that can reliably evaluate screams as to speaker identification at this time.
That is correct. The NIST has not addressed the extreme voice samples like that.
The working group that you talked about includes, you said academics. You're talking about college professors and researchers that don't necessarily run a laboratory.
Yes, in addition to those, we also have representatives from forensic communities. We have representation from DOJ, that's FBI. We have
DOJ,
yes,
the Department of Justice.
that's correct. And we also representation from U.S. Secret Service. We have representation from intelligence communities. I'm not allowed to spell out their names.
It's another acronym, shall we say?
Yes. Multiple intelligence community agencies are also sending representation for this scientific working group as voting members.
Indeed, you are here, are you not, with special permission of the FBI legal counsel?
Yes, sir. Assistant General Counsel of the FBI allowed me to testify for this particular case.
And as a result, in fact, the scope of your testimony is somewhat limited if either Mr. Manti or I were to ask you questions that may be protected for security reasons or outside the scope of this case.
That is correct.
Is your FBI lab a forensic lab?
Yes.
And I want to just have you address that for a moment. The jury may not know what forensic means in the context of the work that you do. By forensic, I'll summarize it, or you correct me, or that it's with a focus toward evaluating evidence for possible use in a courtroom setting.
The other narrow definition and a broad definition of the word in forensics, and what you just defined is a narrow definition of the forensics. Usually, a lot of people think that any evidence created by a forensic laboratory should be able to be produced as evidence in the courtroom. However, there is another interpretation, which is the broad definition. Forensic simply means the analysis that is being conducted for the purpose of investigative guidance, criminal investigation or terrorist investigations.
So in other words, if one of those agencies that's only known by its acronym were actively engaged in investigating terrorist activity, it may or may not ever get into a courtroom, but that would be considered under the broader definition as a forensic application of this science.
That is correct. What they are doing might be using the same technology for investigative purpose by utilizing forensic style. Sometimes forensic style means added rigor of the analysis, and the examiners will be doing analysis and writing report always as if he would be subpoenaed by the court. And everything they write must be substantiated by the evidence, substantiated by the actual analysis. And also, in my area, no single examiner can issue final reports. Usually his decisions, including in this particular case, second examiners have to go through independent analysis and confirm the results. And if there are no confirmation, sometimes, it happens often, the examiner has to move into conflict resolution. And only after there will be a consensus between the two examiners, report will be finally approved and go out.
Is that what you meant when you said a forensic context has added rigor?
Yes, sir.
And in your laboratory, you have other scientists review the work before a final report is issued?
Yes, that's mandated.
And does sometimes that report, or does that work include blind panel testing or blind review of the information?
That happens under situation where when we were asked, said what words were being spoken, and that word turned out to be buried in the noise, very signal to noise ratio, and when we are afraid that listeners bias can play into the decision, we'll move into this blind test. The primary examiner will lead this, and the primary examiner called one exam at a time, not without telling him what he ought to be able to hear. And then usually anywhere from half a dozen to 1 dozen of independent examiners will be involved in this type of, a blind test.
And each examiner would listen to the questioned recording or perform his or her own analysis without first being exposed to the opinion of any other analyst?
That is correct. Exposing the other examiners with the preliminary judgment made by the primary examiner would lead to guaranteed bias. So everybody is trained, every examiners in our laboratory are trained not to induce any potential bias.
I take it it's well recognized that there can be that bias, that someone who listens to something at the same time someone else is may be influenced by the impression or the opinion of the person sitting next to them.
There is always danger of biasing others.
And in your setting, you would not tolerate that.
That is correct.
That's not just good laboratory practice, I take it. That would also be good law enforcement practice as they would investigate a case with voice samples.
Objection, Your Honor. That's number one, outside the stated scope, and number two, outside his permitted testimony. It's not here as a law enforcement.
Sustained.
Your Honor, could we be heard on that? I think that's an important issue that this witness is certainly qualified to talk about.
Well, he's already been qualified as an expert when both sides agreed that he was an expert in voice identification. So please move on.
May I make Dr. Nakasone my witness? That was the plan anyway. I'll just call him right this minute as my witness and ask him that question as my witness, not on cross-examination.
He's not here as law enforcement or to testify as to what law enforcement does. So even if you were to do that, there would be an objection, it would be sustained.
Let me explore that then, thank you. Dr. Nakasone, who do you work for?
I work for the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Is that part of the Department of Justice?
That is correct.
And before that, did you work for law enforcement in Los Angeles?
Yes.
Do you participate in training, both for yourself and to train others?
Yes, I do.
Are the techniques developed in science and in the laboratory to avoid listener bias part of what would disseminate to the field agents so that when they conduct their investigation, they would want to do that consistently with the practice of the laboratory that's ultimately going to be evaluating the evidence?
Our practice at the laboratory is meant to be applied by forensic examiners trained in our own environment, and that is being governed by the Digital Evidence Laboratory, which is accredited by ASCLD, American Society of Crime Lab Directories. And personally, I haven't really guided other law enforcement how to do it, except when I'm being asked by special agents, well, Dr. Nakasone, I have to do, I have to collect a bunch of people and then ask those people, listen to those voices. I would recommend him because he asked. Please, avoid any talking among themselves to eliminate any potential bias. Mm-hmm. When I'm asked, I provide guidelines.
Mm-hmm. When you're talking about the risk of examiner bias, that could carry over into the field if a subject recording that's being played for people...
I object. The rest of the question, and then you can object.
That's being played for people for the purpose of identifying whose voice they are hearing, it creates a high risk of examiner bias if all of the people being asked to identify the voice are played the recording with each other in the same room at the same time, so that each other can see the reactions and comments of each other.
That's not what I would like to recommend.
There's
If
an
I could.
objection.
We are well far afield of even the last attempt to develop this witness's expertise. He said, my training is for forensic examiners, laboratory people. He's not a law enforcement officer, a special agent. He doesn't train them. He occasionally would give advice. Therefore, we're well outside the scope of any expertise that this witness should be testifying about in general terms. If they want to call a law enforcement officer about potential interview bias, that would be the appropriate witness. This isn't. That's my objection.
May I be heard at the bench? I have a constitutional
Yes.
argument to make. Thank you. court overruled the objection, so I may proceed.
Yes, you may.
Dr. Nakasone, we're talking about the increased risk of examiner bias if a procedure were used where a group of people were being asked to listen to a recording to see if they could recognize who was on the recording, and that the process that was used involved putting all of the people in the same room at the same time around each other when the recordings were played. Do you understand the sort of scenario there? Under that scenario, would there be an increased risk of infecting the reliability of the identification based upon the circumstances of that kind of process?
I do believe there is a increased risk of bias, listener bias, already built in, because the blind test, or if we want to have multiple people came up with the conclusion which was derived independently, that would add more validity and reliability of the test. But if all of those people have a chance to sort of gauge what other people are saying, there might be definitely risk of including a bias in the end results.
And if you were advising law enforcement what to do when they have a group of people that they want to play the recording, you would recommend that they play it individually, one by one, outside the presence of the others.
I have done that, provided that kind of recommendation numerous times to the FBI agents.
I mean, I take it in your community, in your scientific community, that just makes common sense.
That is correct.
And you can't think of any reason why somebody would do it all in a group.
Object, that would call for speculation.
Any good reason why
It's not ideal way of,
It's one at a time.
any good reason why somebody would do that is my question.
Still speculative.
I'm talking about a good reason in your community, a good reason in law enforcement for voice identification why somebody would put everybody in the same room and play the recording at once.
And it's still speculative.
Okay, for the third time sustained.
I would move defendants FF into evidence. That's Dr. Nakasone's CV. Dr. Nakasone, it has a more detailed background of your education as well as your...
Is this a question, or you're asking the court to move it into evidence?
Well, I'm just laying the predicate quickly that it has more detail.
No, my question is, are you moving it into evidence, or are you asking Dr. Nakasone a question?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I apologize to the court. I'm moving it into evidence.
Any objections to defense exhibit?
May the
number
witness
1?
just hold on to it for a
It'll come
minute?
into evidence as
Thank you.
defense exhibit 20. If you'll hand it to the clerk, she'll go ahead and mark it, and you can continue with your questioning.
May the witness just hold on to it for a minute?
Sure.
Dr. Nakasone, I take it, pride yourself because of the work you do, not just with the FBI, but your active participation in the scientific community in this area at large, to know what's going on around the world in the area of speaker identification. In the scientific community in this area at large, to know what's going on around among the people that you work with, there is a consensus as to certain kinds of voice samples that are suitable for forensic analysis. That you work with, there is a consensus as to certain kinds of your decision in this case wasn't based solely on your personal view about what samples are reliable or suitable. So your decision in this case,
I strongly believe my opinion is supported by my colleagues
are reliable
in the scientific
or
community.
suitable and which ones aren't. let's talk about,
I
first
strongly
of all,
believe my
the
opinion is supported
suitability
by
of
my
the
colleagues
samples you have in this
the
case,
scientific
which
community.
boils down to the, let's talk about first
the
of all,
screaming,
the cries
the
for help on that recording.
suitability of the samples
When you
have in this
evaluated
case,
it, I
which
know
boils
from
down
what you
to
said that you took the total
screaming,
amount
the cries for help
of the
on that
speech.
recording.
And you said that was
When
about
you
18 seconds,
evaluated
give or
it,
take.
I know from what
That
you
is correct.
said that you
out
took
of the
total
total
45-second
of the
period
speech,
from when the
and you
screaming
said that was
started
about 18
until
seconds, give or
the
take.
what the
That is
apparent
correct.
gunshot. Out
That
of
is
the
correct.
45-second
you distilled that to
period
18
from when,
seconds,
and
the
then
screaming
when you
started
removed
until
the what would it be fair to
the
say the
apparent
masking noise or
correct.
overlapped
So
speech?
you distilled that to 18
You
seconds, and then when
had
you
considerably
removed
less
the,
to work with. In
would
fact,
it
it
be
was
fair to
under
say the
3
masking
seconds. Noise
That's
or overlapped
correct.
speech.
2.53 seconds.
You had considerably less to work with. In fact, it was under 3
Are you
seconds.
saying that it was only
That's
2.35
correct.
seconds that
2.53
could in
seconds.
any way be considered
And-
suitable? And I don't mean suitable that it was
Are you saying that it was
suitable,
only
but that's what you had to
2.35
start
seconds
with
that
to
could
make that
in
decision?
any way be considered
Yes,
suitable?
that was
And I don't mean
cleanest
suitable that
area
it
if
was
we attempt
suitable, but that's what you
to
had
do
to
any
start
kind of
with
analysis.
to make
Not
that
for
decision.
just voice ID for, but any
Yes,
kind of
that
analysis.
was
cleanest area.
When you say that
if
you
we
would like
attempt,
30 seconds or a
to do
minute
any
up
kind of
to
analysis.
3 minutes
Not
of
for
speech
just voice
for
ID
an
for, but
analysis,
any kind of analysis.
are you talking about when you say
normal
that you would
speech
like
or
30
screaming
seconds
speech?
or a minute up
Normal,
to 3 minutes
natural
of
conversational speech.
for an analysis?
And why is that?
Are you
What's this
talking
notion
about
of
phonetically
normal speech
balanced
or
speech?
screaming speech?
Normal, natural conversational speech.
And why is
Computer
that? What's this
takes
notion of phonetically balanced
statistics
speech?
of dynamic variation of the somewhere around computer takes 1,000 statistics of different dynamic variation of and to formulate sufficiently statistically significant 1,000 different speech features. It takes and to formulate sample which contains sufficiently statistically significant extensive phonetic contents. It takes say like in English speech sample which contains in English there are 44 different phonetic contents. We call them phonemes. Say like and before English, those 44 phonemes to occur, in English there are 44 different sounds. It takes 4 while. We call them phonemes. One word. And before those 44 phonemes to occur, 3 different reasonably, it takes 4 while. So like when I say one word, S is one sound, maybe produce. A is another. 3 different last part of the Y sound or E sound. So like when I say, and S is one sound. Say someone says A is another. Last part you have of about the Y sound or E sound. Different kind of sounds. 3 phonemes. And say someone says help. You have about 3 for the entire phonemes reasonably, comprehensively. H and L before it happens. We need reasonable now speech duration. The entire phonemes and reasonably, that varies depending upon the vocabulary. Before it happens, we need reasonable use speech and durations. By doing empirical studies, vocabulary, we determined that somewhere around 30 seconds. By doing speech sample, empirical studies, well balanced, we determined that
Are you saying 30
around,
seconds of what you characterize as normal speech?
Samples that is called in conversational speech, well balanced,
Not conversational speech, not
Are you
someone
saying
yelling
30
help
seconds
over and
of
over for
what you
30 seconds?
characterize as normal speech?
If someone continues conversational speech, yell,
Not conversational
with the same,
speech, not
phonetic
someone
content
yelling
for
help
30
over
seconds.
and over for 30 seconds.
we can still count. If someone continues to yell with the same, phonetic content for 30 seconds, phonemes, and that's we can far still less than is what is being required to do meaningful scientific, analysis. Or
So when you talk about the
phonemes,
duration, the
that's far
30
less than
seconds,
what is being
and I think you
required
said
to do
maybe
meaningful
sometimes even if
scientific,
it's only
analysis.
15 seconds,
So when
maybe
you talk
or
about the
16
duration,
seconds,
the
maybe you can
30
do
seconds,
a voice analysis.
and I think you said
If it
maybe
gets to be sometimes
14
even
or
if it's
10,
only 15
it's
seconds,
very
maybe,
questionable.
or 16 seconds,
Maybe
maybe
you're
you
talking
can do
about a voice analysis.
the duration
If
of
it gets to
normal
be
speech that would
14 or
contain as
10,
many of
it's
these
very questionable.
phonemes that you're talking about. You're
That is
talking
correct.
about
Let me a little bit
the
clear about the
duration
distinction
of
between
normal
30 seconds
speech
and
that would
15 seconds
contain
or
as
so.
many of these
If I keep the
phonemes
continue
that you're
talking
talking
like this and for 30 seconds
That is
or
correct.
so,
Let me a little bit clear
and
about
then,
the distinction
record
between
it,
30 seconds
and when
and
we
15
analyze,
seconds or so.
my 30 second
If I
speech
keep the
sample
continue talking
contains
like this and for 30
a lot
seconds
of
or so,
pauses in between,
and then
gestation pause,
record it,
or
and then when we
syntactic
analyze,
pause. And
my
those
30
pause
second
doesn't
speech sample
carry too much
contains
information.
a lot of
And
pauses
after
in
those
between,
were
gestation
removed,
pause,
you will
or
be
syntactic pause,
end up with
and
heading.
those in the pause doesn't
core,
carry too much
or
information.
bulk of
and
speech
after
information.
those were removed, and that
you
will
will be
become
usually
end up with
either
either
heading
70%
core,
or 50%
or
range.
bulk of
So if you
speech
have
information.
30 seconds of natural
And
spoken
that would become
speech, usually either to
It's fair to
70%
predict
or
you're going to have
50
50
seconds.
seconds. I mean, 15
So
seconds.
if you have 30 seconds,
But you have to
of,
measure that
natural spoken
after you complete,
speech,
this extraction.
it's fair
of
to
the
predict
silence.
you're
and
going to have
pause
30
areas.
seconds.
And if you have,
I mean,
say,
15 seconds,
probably, but you have to
probably
measure
exam
that
that would feel
after you
comfortable
complete
going to
this
analysis.
extraction.
But
of the silence
standard
and
operating
pause areas.
procedure
And if you
mandates,
have, say,
if it's say
50
a 10
seconds,
second or so,
probably
examiner has
that would
to
feel comfortable
call it
going
quick.
to analysis.
But
Because
standard operating
our
procedure
empirical
mandates,
study
if it's, say, a 10
indicates
second or so,
the
examiner
error rate
has
would
to
go up
call it quick.
if we utilize too
because,
short of a speech sample.
our,
empirical study indicates.
So if I hear what you're
the
saying,
error
if
rate
you have
would
30
go up
seconds of
if we
normal
utilize
speech,
too
by the
short
time
of
you
a
get rid
speech
of the
samples.
pauses and hesitations and
So
such,
if I hear what you're
you may
saying,
have only
if you have
15
30
seconds
of
left that
normal
you can then
speech, by the
analyze.
time you get rid of
That's
the
the
pauses
typical
and hesitations
scenario
and
we
such,
get into.
you
Yes,
may
sir.
have only 15 seconds left that you
Is
can
there
then
any
amount?
That's
Well,
the
let me back
typical
up first.
uh,
When you
scenario
listen
we get
to
into.
recordings
Yes, sir.
such as the one in this case, are you trying to make, is there any amount trying to reach
Well,
a
let me back
decision
up first.
whether
When you
the
listen
person
to
is under
recordings such
high
as the one in this
stress or
case,
even in a
are you
life-threatening
trying to make-
situation? Trying to reach a decision
We
whether the person
assess
is
whether
under
it's
high
normal
stress
or
even in a
deviates
life-threatening
for normal
situation.
range. And examiners are usually,
we have been already
assess
exposed
whether it's
to
normal
variety of
or
recording
deviates
conditions,
for normal range.
and he is allowed to
And
make that
examiners
judgment.
are usually
You heard the
have
calls,
been
and
already
you heard the screams in this
exposed
case
to
yourself.
variety
You did
of
the work.
yes.
recording conditions.
And did you consider
And
the
he is
person
allowed to make
screaming
that
to be
judgment.
in a life-threatening situation? You heard the calls and, you heard the
Yes,
screams in
it
this case
was
yourself. You
after,
did the work.
under extreme
And did you consider the
emotional
person
state.
screaming to be in a life-threatening situation?
Yes, it was uttered under
Facing
extreme
that
situation, emotional state, very extreme, emotional state.
Does that make it
Facing that situation.
extremely
yes,
challenging for
very
you whether there can be any
extreme,
kind of
emotional state.
further analysis
Does that make
at all?
it
Extremely challenging for
Actually,
you
along with the,
whether there
our
can be
report,
any kind of
we
further analysis at all?
talked to Tampa FBI
actually,
agents
who
along with
submitted this
our
case,
report, because he asked. We, I
talked to
recommended him
Tampa
not to
FBI
attempt
agents who
to
submitted
record
this
and
case
acted in a
because he
screaming
asked.
voice for this particular case. I recommended him
I'm sorry, I
not to
didn't follow
attempt
what you said.
to,
You recommended
record and acted in a
that there
screaming
be another
voice for this
recording or
particular-
not?
No,
use?
I recommended FBI agent that he
I'm sorry,
would
I
not
didn't follow what you said.
attempt to
You
record
recommended
and
that
acted
there be another recording or not?
screaming
use?
No, I
voice
recommended
for this
FBI
particular case.
agent that
Let's
he
help the
would not
jury follow this a little
attempt
bit.
to record
You told the
and
agent
acted screaming voice for
not
this,
to
for this particular
attempt
case.
to
Let's
do
help
a
the jury follow
reenactment
this a little
recording. You told the agent for use in this case. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Not to attempt voice comparison to do a reenactment. While you haven't said it precisely today, is once you get your unknown sample
Yes.
processed and
Voice
prepared and
comparison,
ready
I
to
take it, while you haven't
analyze.
said it precisely
The
today,
analysis
is
is
once
by
you get your
comparing
unknown
it
sample
with a known
processed and
sample
prepared and
of a
ready to
person's voice. Analyze. Is that correct?
That is
The
correct.
Analysis. So you
is by
don't ever do the
comparing it
analysis just
with
listening
a known
to the
sample
one unknown
of a
voice
person's voice.
on its
That
own.
is correct.
Correct? So you don't ever do the analysis just
When we were
listening
giving only
to the
unknown
one
voice,
unknown
we are
voice.
not doing any voice comparison.
On
However,
its own,
we will be
correct?
evaluating whether this particular unknown voice
When we
has
were
a,
giving only
you know,
unknown
voice, we are not doing any
sufficient
voice comparison
information
in it.
for
However,
us
we
to
will be
do,
evaluating
future
whether
analysis
this particular
if
unknown
we were
voice
given
as a,
another voice
you know,
samples
we have to compare with. Is sufficient
So
information
your
in it
decision
for us
to tell
do,
the
you know,
agent
future analysis.
out of the Tampa
If we
office,
were given
basically
another
don't
voice
bother
samples,
trying
we
to
have
do
to
a
compare with.
reenactment was So your because decision no to tell reenactment the agent under Tampa basically office such different basically circumstances don't bother could trying to possibly do a give you reenactment was an because exemplar no worthy reenactment of a reliable comparison.
under
Under basically such different circumstances. could
we
possibly
believe
give
it
you
would be extremely
a-
difficult
an
to
exemplar
recreate in the same
reliable
situation. It's not just, you know, we
I mean,
believe
screen
it
voice
would be
just
extremely
doesn't have a,
difficult, you know, to
raise the
recreate in the
pitch.
same situation.
Something else is changing.
It's not
too.
just, you know,
Scientists
I mean,
believe
screen
that
voice, potentially
just
there
doesn't
might
have
be
a,
some,
you know,
raised physiological or
Something
anatomical,
else is changing too.
structure.
Scientists
believe that potentially
when they
there
are,
might be
you know,
some
different
under you know, specific
physiological,
conditions,
anatomical,
this resonance
structure,
could be
mechanism
mechanism
different.
can change too. When they are
And,
you know,
different
since it's
under,
not
you know,
really easy
specific,
to
you know,
recreate in the
conditions,
same
this,
situation, resonance, you know,
we
mechanism
don't
can
believe
change too.
as a scientific
And
community,
since
we
it's
can
not really
recreate
easy to recreate in the same situation, this unique situation. We
it's-
don't
it's-
believe it's, as a scientific
it's-
community, it doesn't happen. We can recreate every day.
It's difficult.
This unique
Screaming
situation.
in this context is, you're saying physiologically
doesn't
very,
happen
very different
every
than
day.
talking
It's
but
difficult.
really loud. Screaming in this
That is correct.
context
It's
is,
completely
you're
different
saying
type.
physiologically
The
very, very
scientists
different
do not know
than talking
exactly how they are
but
different.
really loud.
That is correct.
So
It's completely
there's
different
really,
type.
if I hear you
And the
correctly,
scientists
there's
do
no
not know
amount
exactly how
of
they are
screaming
different.
speech, whether it's 2.53
So there's
seconds
really, if I
or
hear you
10
correctly,
seconds,
there's no
or maybe
amount
30
of
minutes
screaming speech
that would be suitable
whether
for
it's
the kind of voice
2.53
comparison
seconds or
analysis
10 seconds
that we are able
or
to
maybe
do now in the current state.
30
of the art.
minutes.
That would be suitable
That is
for
correct.
the kind of voice comparison analysis that we are able to do now in the current state of the art. You also said, I believe,
That is correct.
because, I'll connect the dots here if I heard you correctly, because of the physiological changes
said, I
that come
believe,
about
that
when someone screams under
because-
very
I'll
high
connect the
stress,
dots
in
here
a
if I heard you
life-threatening
correctly,
situation,
because of
for
the
example, physiological
that
changes that
it
come
has
about
such a
when someone
profound
screams
impact
under very high stress
on the
in a
way they
life-threatening
sound,
situation, for example, that you can't in any way
that
reliably say
it
how
has
old
such
the
a
person is
profound
that's screaming.
impact on the way they sound
I don't
that
think it
you
would
can't
be
in
possible
any way
to determine the
reliably
age
say
by
how
listening
old the person is
to
that's
that
screaming.
extreme type of voice.
So in other words, the
I don't
screams
think
that
it
you
would be
heard on that
possible to determine the
911
age by
call
listening
could be
to
made
that
by a
extreme type of voice.
27-year-old, a
So in other words,
35-year-old,
the
or
screams
even a
that you heard on
50-year-old
that
man 911 call under similar circumstances could be made
Under
by
similar
a
circumstances,
27-year-old, a 35-year-old,
very,
or even a
very
50-year-old
challenging.
man
and
under similar circumstances.
under similar circumstances, scientific community may not attempt. It's not only
very,
myself.
very challenging.
Attempt to guess
And,
or estimate age. Scientific
of the
community
person
may
who's
not
screaming.
attempt.
And you can't do that
Not
in this
only
case.
myself.
I did not
to
attempt.
guess or estimate age of
And
the
you
person
didn't
who is
attempt
screaming.
because,
And you
based
can't do
upon
that
what
in this
you
case.
know from your own work,
I did not
what you know
attempt.
from being a member of the scientific community, that to do
you
so
didn't
would be a
attempt
fool's
because
errand.
based
That you
upon
can't
what
come
you
up
know from
with
your
a
own work,
reliable
what you know
scientific
from being a
opinion
member of the
because
scientific
it's
community,
screaming, someone screaming
that
for
to
their
do
life.
so
would be a fool's errand. That you can't come up
In
with
my
a reliable scientific
opinion,
because
that's
it's
the,
screaming, someone screaming for their life.
consensus among the scientific. In my opinion, that's the consensus among the scientific group or members.
I think with all of that, what you're saying is science really doesn't help us in this case. With all of figure that, out what you're saying is
Unfortunately, that is correct.
science really doesn't help us in this case. The best chance, if any, in your mind would be
Unfortunately, that is
based
correct.
upon lay witnesses that have familiarity. The best chance, if any, the voice in your mind either would be George Zimmerman or Trayvon Martin witnesses or both that have familiarity
That is my opinion.
with the
Yes,
voice
correct.
of either. Are there still the same challenges because it's very limited speech, because it's under high duress,
That is my opinion.
because
Yes,
it's in the
correct.
background? Are there still the same challenges because it's very limited speech, because it's under high duress,
Layperson
because it's in the background,
familiar voice
and the kinds of
recognition
things that you've
would
talked
be the
about
best,
already?
here. But as you mentioned, layperson, yes, there is a challenge of familiar voice recognition would be characterized by. But as you mentioned, the fact that yes, there is a challenge. And that challenge has a familiarity. The question characterized by would this person the fact is in possession of the information person has a familiarity, specific, the question perceptual features that would this person is in possession yelling and screaming of the information to the same features specific, they can retrieve from their memory, they can extract about their yelling and screaming loved ones to the same features they can retrieve from their memory audio information about their loved ones.
So the same situation is still an issue. In other words, you're saying if they can connect something they hear in the recording with something that they know is familiar, that's the best chance you're going to get in this case of someone being able to identify the voice. Something that they know is familiar.
It doesn't
That's
have
the
to be
best
exactly
chance you're going to
same,
get in this
but
case of
somewhat,
someone
under
being
similar
able to identify
conditions.
the voice.
Yes.
Would you urge
Doesn't
caution
have
to this
be
jury as
exactly
well?
same, but
In that
somewhat,
sort of
under
analysis,
similar
trying to figure out
conditions.
lay witness testimony, would you urge caution to this jury as well? Say they can identify the voice. In that sort of analysis, all the things you've trying to figure out, urge caution. Lay witness testimony that listening to say they can the opinions of the lay witnesses you've talked about, and suggest caution. It really needs to be in the context of the case. Listening to the opinions of the lay witnesses.
The judge will give the
suggest
instructions to the jury at
it
the end
really
of the
needs to
case
be
when
in
the
the
evidence
context
is
of the
complete,
case.
and those are the instructions that the jury will follow. Your objection is sustained. The judge will give the instructions to the jury at the end of the case when the evidence is complete, and those are the instructions that the jury will follow. Your objection is sustained.
May I have just one moment, Judge? Thank you. May I have just one moment, Judge? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Max.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Please, John. So, Doctor, what I understand you to say by specific perceptual
Thank you.
features
Any
is the
redirect?
best type of person to make these sorts of judgments on, even on a sample like this, is someone who's heard specific perceptual features is the best type of person to make sort of similar judgments on, even on a
That is
sample like
correct.
this. So they've heard them upset or in distress before. The
Yes.
potential speaker under sort of similar circumstances. As far, would
That
you,
is
would you
correct.
want, so they've heard would you say that they would have a, that kind of listener would have an advantage
Yes.
over someone who's never heard the person
As
upset
far-
or in
would
great
you- would you
distress
want-
before? Would you say that they would have a, that kind of listener would have an advantage over someone who's never heard the person
I think,
upset or in great distress before?
The person who has heard same features from both voices, I think would be more reliable. Who has heard same individual who claims he is familiar with certain people, but everything what he heard from this particular person are coming from a normal type of familiar with certain people.
Thank you.
But
You
everything
referenced
what he heard from
talking
this
about
particular
standards of
person are coming
desiring
from a
30
normal type
seconds
of,
or that sort of thing
conversation.
of speech and words. That was as it relates to standards of desiring 30-second. All of those standards and things like that, those were as it relates to your and words desire to conduct as it relates to computer-assisted or an algorithm-assisted examination. All of those standards and things like that, those were as it relates to lay listener type approach. Desire to conduct
That is correct.
computer-assisted or an algorithm-assisted. And as far as this idea of, because before I leave that point, I think I heard you say earlier that, for example,
That is correct.
if you were talking on the phone with your mom, and as far as this idea of,
That is correct.
because
Doesn't take
before I
too
leave
long.
that point, I think I
A few
heard you say
seconds.
earlier that, for example, and as I want to go back to this idea of examiner
is
bias
correct.
and why you as a
Doesn't take
scientist
too
try to
long.
avoid it.
A few seconds.
And as I want to go back to this idea in an ideal, you try to make things as a scientist as ideal as possible, right?
Yes.
As I understand it, you attempt to control as many variables as you can. As a scientist, as ideal as possible. Do you think
Yes.
that you attempt to control as many variables as you can? Practices or things of that nature. Do you think in a laboratory that
No,
law
we
enforcement
do not have
needs
any
some practices or
saying
things of that
about
nature?
what they do,
mirror
unless
what
I'm
should go on in a
specifically
laboratory?
request to give them
No,
guidance.
we
But
do not
otherwise,
have any saying
usually say
about
like
what they
we
do,
prefer the voices
unless
will be
I'm
recorded by a
specifically
high fidelity
request to give
microphone
them
tape recorder.
guidance, but
Otherwise, most of the voices
usually
we
say
receive
like,
we
recorded
prefer
by
a
voices
variety
will
of
be recorded
random
by
recording
high
devices. We take them all.
tape recorder.
And just so I'm
But
clear on this
Most of the
concept of
voices
what
we
you refer to
receive are
as
recorded by a
the,
variety of
potential bias.
random
Again,
recording
you were
devices.
talking
We
in
take them
context
all.
And just so I'm clear on this concept of conduct what you called an unfamiliar voice analysis, the computer-assisted or that type of identification where you don't know. Having a scientist or have never heard what you called an unfamiliar voice analysis, the computer-assisted or
Yes.
that type of identification where you don't know. And
However, though, that happens also in the voice lineup
Yes.
situation. We recommend to
and,
FBI
however,
agents.
though,
That
when
happens
who asks-
also in the voice lineup situation. We recommend to FBI
Please avoid
agents.
your comments.
who asked.
Go ahead, Doctor, you may continue.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Doctor.
I said
Please
Yeah.
avoid your comments.
the
Go
effort
ahead, Doctor,
to
you
guide
may
them
continue.
to remove any bias effect. I said happens not only to the technical analysis for unfamiliar voices, guide them, but also to remove any bias effect. Equally important, not only to the same, technical analysis for unfamiliar
Safeguards
voices against bias, but also it is equally important in the same voice recognition as well. To safeguard against bias. Would be risk of bias and also to improve the credibility of the results. Remove this, risk of bias and also to improve the credibility of the results
You're talking about a
of
situation
this,
where possibly a victim of a crime is asked to
identification
come down and
procedure.
listen to potential suspects say what the perpetrator said. Situation where possibly a victim of a crime. Is that what you're talking about, a voice lineup? Come down and listen to potential suspects.
Yeah, that would be part of
say
that
what
too.
the perpetrator
But
said.
sometimes it happens,
that what you're
there's
talking
not
about,
enough,
voice lineup?
quality in the very lengthy, Yeah, that would be part
voice
of recordings
recordings
happening
But,
in the
sometimes,
federal
it
cases.
happens,
and
there's
I
not
recommend
enough,
quality
quality
they
in
can
the
do
very
be
lengthy,
to find somebody
voice
who are
recording
familiar
is
with the
happening
voices
in the,
federal
and I advise
cases.
them,
And I
if
recommend
they have, say,
only
3
3
or
or
4
4
potential
to find
individuals
somebody who are familiar
presumably
with the familiar with the voice.
And I advise them
to have
if
each
they have, say,
listen to
3
the
or
recorded
4
voice
potential
of the target
individuals
who
presumably
presumably familiar with the voice. Advise them. That's
If
part
you
of
have
the
each
my
listen to the
recommendation.
recorded
voice of the target
If
individual
we're
separately,
talking
one
about
at a time.
potential for bias.
That's
if
part
that
of
is
the
exactly what
my
it is, right?
recommendation.
Potential?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. If I were talking about the potential for bias, have you and that is exactly what it is, right? With your mother's voice,
Yes.
listen to it together. Are you worried that that would compromise your? Have you and ability another person to recognize someone with whose voice you are so familiar? Listen to it together. Are you worried that that
Well,
would
there's
compromise
always a
your,
chance.
okay, ability?
I might get
recognize someone whose voice
compromised.
was so familiar. When you say there's a chance,
yes.
certainly doesn't mean it's going
Well,
to happen,
there's always
does
a chance.
Objection, lead it.
I might get compromised.
When you say there's a chance,
Yes.
certainly doesn't mean it's going to happen, does it?
If two voices at hand, we have to compare, are so obviously different. So obviously different. If two voices obviously same at hand, we have to chance of examiner bias so obviously different, lesser than the situation in which so obviously two voices sound alike. The chance of examiner bias very difficult to analyze, lesser. And the situation, I think human, the examiner's voices, they have a tendency to, or sort of very difficult to analyze. The leader. And that happens. I think human and the examiner's they have a tendency. The bias issue sort is of very serious, the leader. And that happens. And embedded within the bias issue is a very serious as well. It's a very serious issue. Topic.
Does bias work both
Embedded
ways?
within the
By that I mean,
scientific working group for
if you
the
go
speaker
into it
recognition as well.
Not
It's
wanting
very serious
or
issue.
assuming that you're not hearing the same voice, both ways.
It can go either way.
Okay. If you go into
As
it
far as familiar
not wanting
voice
or
identification
assuming that
goes,
you're not hearing the same voice,
understanding the frailties of this
It
particular
can go
tech-
either way.
As far as
Understanding
familiar
what you've said is
voice
the
identification
scientific-
goes,
The more scientific computer system
understanding the
method doesn't
frailties of this
provide us
particular
with
tech.
enough here. Did I understand your testimony? You
Yeah,
said
that
it's
is
the
correct.
scientific-
Because
the more
the
scientific
computer,
computer
there's no
system
way
doesn't provide us with
for the
enough
computer
here.
to contain
Did I understand your testimony?
all
Yes.
sorts of features coming from
there's
the
no
voice.
way
It's
for-
analyzed. For the computer,
It's just a
to
one-shot
contain
analysis.
all
So
sorts
if
of
you've only got that one shot,
features
The
coming
best
from the
person to
voice.
do it is
It's
someone who's
analyzed.
heard that
It's
voice.
just a
similar
one-shot
circumstances.
analysis.
That is correct.
So if you've only got that one shot, the best person to do it is someone who's heard that voice under similar circumstances.
That is correct.
Thank you.
At the FBI lab, you don't limit your analysis just to the computer, the automated speaker recognition, is that correct? At the FBI lab.
That is
you don't
correct.
limit your analysis just to the computer.
Our approach is called
automated speaker recognition,
hybrid
is that correct?
approach. That is correct. It's a method of automated our
speaker
approach
recognition
is called
computer
hybrid approach.
supervised
by it's a method
trained
of
examiner.
automated speaker recognition, and
The
this
computer
means the numbers
supervised by
regurgitated by the computer
trained
alone
examiner.
cannot be utilized to
As a
and,
source of
this
report.
means the
numbers
examiner will
regurgitated
be
by the computer
conducting
alone
his
cannot be
examination
utilized
independent
as a
from
source of
computers.
a report.
Because human
The,
can extract
examiner will be
some features
conducting
that the computers
his
cannot
examination
independent
vice versa.
from computers.
So
Because human can
always
extract
those two components
some features
moving
that the
together.
computers
In
can
other
it's
words-
called and vice versa. Automated
So,
speaker recognition
always
with
those
human
two
in the loop.
components
That's
moving
another term.
together.
You always have a trained
It's called,
examiner listening, in other
That
words.
is correct.
And your
Automated
examiners are
speaker
trained
recognition
in
with human
the
in the
various methodologies
That's another
available
term.
for. You always have a speaker trained examiner recognition. listening, in other words.
That is correct. The
And your
computer
examiners are
cannot really
trained
assess
in the
whether
various methodologies
input and
available
voices are
for
produced
speaker
under
recognition.
inference of article. That is correct. The
Or
computer cannot tell right
really
now
assess
whether person
whether,
was happy,
input and voices are
sad,
produced under
or
inference
voice
of
was
article,
produced under
or
computer cannot tell
abnormal
right now
due,
whether person
duress.
was happy. So to detect
sad,
all of those, we have
or
to depend
voice
upon
was
the
trained
produced
examiners.
under abnormal due. So
Or
these
duress.
two components
to detect
all
must
of
go
those,
hand
we
in
have to
hand
depend upon the
in
trained
our
our practice at FBI. So
You
these
mentioned
two
that the
components must go hand in
spectrographic
hand
analysis was a
in
method that
our
was
practice
employed
at
at
FBI.
more in the past than in.
You mentioned
than
that
currently.
the
And the
spectrographic
FBI does not currently
analysis
use
was
that
a
approach,
method
is
that
that
was
correct? Employed.
It was
at
used up to
more in the past
last
than,
year.
than currently. And the
FBI,
FBI does not currently use
modernized
that
the
approach, is
speaker
that correct?
recognition technology.
It was used
on
up
May
to
15,
last year.
2012.
So
FBI,
examiners would not
modernize
use
spectrographic
voice comparison
technology
anymore
May
for the
15,
purpose of the voice
2012.
comparisons.
It's been replaced
So
by
examiners
the
would
advanced
not use modern
spectrographic
computer
voice software
comparison anymore.
Based upon your
for the
knowledge
purpose of
that
voice
the event
comparisons.
in
It's
this
been
case
replaced
occurred on
by
February
advanced
26,
modern
2012,
computer software.
is there any methodology
Based
that you're
upon your
familiar
knowledge
with that
that
would
the
include
event in
the
this case
oral
occurred
perceptual
on February
methodology, the
26,
spectrographic
2012?
analysis, or the automated
Is there
speaker
any
recognition,
methodology that you're familiar with that would include
software approach
the
that
oral
the FBI
perceptual
now uses
methodology, the
that would
spectrographic analysis,
or the automated speaker
be
recognition
suitable
for analyzing the
software
screams that we
approach
had
that
in this
the
case?
FBI now
None.
uses that
Thank you,
would
Doctor, that's all I have.
May I redirect?
be suitable for analyzing the screams that we
redirect?
had in this case.
Suitable for scientifically,
Thank you, Doctor, that's all.
for generating a report under your protocol. When you say there's no suitable methodology, is that what you mean? Scientifically, for generating a
Yes,
report, okay.
there was no
When you say there's no
technology
suitable
or scientific
methodology,
device,
is that what you mean?
algorithm, software were
Yes,
suitable to
there was
analyze
no,
the particular, voice we had. Technology
would
or
not
scientific
preclude,
device, algorithm, software
familiar voice recognition
were
by
suitable to analyze the particular, the
voice we
individuals
had.
who are
But
familiar
that
with
would
the
not
voice.
preclude
Thank you. May Dr. Nakasone
familiar
be
voice
excused?
recognition by
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, sir.
the
You're
individuals.
excused. Is
Thank
this
you.
a good-
Familiar with
Thank
the
you.
voice.
Is this a good time for
May
a
Dr.
recess?
Nakasone be
Break?
excused?
Okay, we'll be in recess for
Thank you
15
very much,
minutes.
sir. You're excused.
Is
Thank
this
you,
a good-
Anna.
Thank you. Is this a good time for a recess, a break? Okay, we'll be in recess for 15 minutes. Please be seated. We're back on the record. Are we ready to bring the jury back in?
Stand for police investigators and also state proposed jury instruction regarding the state proposed jury instruction regarding the action of the defendant. There are various interviews and some more deeply relevant jury instruction. I believe the defense counsel has no objection. I will request that the court read this at the appropriate time, and I will alert the court to various interviews.
Okay, there is no objection to either one of these?
I believe the defense counsel
Okay,
has no
thank you. You'll let me know.
One final thing, if I could, Mr. Romero and I met, I guess,
Okay,
late
there is
Friday.
no
We had a
objection
meeting
to either
before in
one of
terms of
these?
redactions, but we have
Okay,
agreed
thank
to
you. You'll let me
redactions
know.
that were made and will be part of the record of the actual exhibit. Mr. Romero and I met, or some of the exhibits that will go in the meeting before in terms of redactions, but we have agreed to redactions that were made and will be part of the record of the actual exhibit. Or some of the exhibits that will go in. Right. There are parts of the recordings of interviews with the defendant that, due to agreement by both sides and obviously in terms of legal. Right. There are parts of recordings of interviews with the defendant that.
And it is the redacted copies that are going to be introduced into evidence?
Requires the only part excised out of redacted. Some of them are audio and some
And
of
it
them
is the redacted copies that are going to be
That's correct.
introduced
There
into
are
evidence?
transcripts, but they're not being introduced into evidence. Some of them are audio and some of them are.
Okay, thank you.
That's correct. There are
Are
transcripts.
we ready
but
to
they're
bring the
not
jury
being
in?
introduced. We are, Your Honor.
Okay, come on, we'll bring them in. Okay, thank you. Are we ready to bring the jury in? Okay, come on, we'll bring them in.
Jurors present, Your Honor. Jurors present, Your
Please be seated. The state will please call your next witness.
I would call Dorris Singleton.
Please be seated. The state will please call your next witness.
I would call Dorris Singleton.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
You state your name for the record, please.
Dorris Singleton, Singleton.
What is your occupation, ma'am?
I'm a police officer with the Sanford Police Department.
State your name for the record, please. And are you assigned to a particular unit?
I'm assigned to the Neighborhood Response Unit.
What is your occupation,
How
ma'am?
long
I'm a police
have you
officer
been
with the
with the
Sanford
Sanford
Police Department?
December
And
will be
are you
9
assigned to a
years.
particular unit? And
I'm
what have
assigned to the
been your
Neighborhood
previous
Response
assignments
Unit.
prior to the one you're in? How long have you been with
I've
the
also
Sanford
been
Police
on
Department?
Road December will Patrol. be 9 I've been a years. school resource officer.
And what
I've
have
been an investigator with the
been your
narcotics
previous
unit.
assignments prior to the one you're in right now? How long were you an investigator with
I've
the
also been
narcotics unit?
on Road Patrol, about 3 to 4 years. Resource officer.
And
I've
how
been
long
an
have you been in
investigator
your
with the
current
narcotics
position?
unit. Since
How long
February,
were you an investigator with the narcotics unit? Prior to that, were you with the narcotics unit?
about 3 to 4 years.
And
how long
prior
have you been in
to
your current
being with the
position?
Sanford Police Department, did you
Since
have any law
February.
enforcement experience? Prior to that, were you with the narcotics unit?
Out of college, many years ago, I was a parole officer for
And
2
prior
years in the
to
state.
being with the Sanford
Could you
Police
briefly
Department,
tell us
did you
about
have
your
any law
education
enforcement
background,
experience?
I have a
Out of
bachelor's
college,
degree from
many
University
years
of
ago, I was a
Florida
parole officer
in
for
criminal
2 years
justice
in
with
the
a minor in
Could you briefly
legal
tell us
studies.
about your education background,
I
ma'am?
also went to the
I
probation
have
officer
a
academy
bachelor's degree from
after
University
college.
of
That was in
Florida.
'92 in criminal justice
I've been
with a
to the
minor
police academy.
in legal studies. And then we have I also went to the
Training
probation
as we go along
officer
within the
academy
police department.
after
All right.
college. That
I
was
want
in
to draw your
92.
attention back to
I've
February
been
of
to the
last
police
year, that
academy.
is 2012.
And then we have,
What was your assignment at that
Training
time?
as we go along within the
I
police
was
department.
assigned to the narcotics
I
unit.
want to draw your
As an
attention back to
investigator.
February of last year.
I
that
want
is
to draw your attention to
2012.
Sunday evening, February
What was your
26th of
assignment at that time?
2012.
Were
I
you
was
on
assigned to the
duty or off
narcotics
duty
unit.
that evening?
As an
I was
investigator.
off duty.
I want to
Did you
draw
get
your
a call
attention
to
to
assist
Sunday
an
evening,
investigator
February
regarding a
26th
shooting that
of
occurred at the retreat at
2012.
Twin Lakes?
Were you on
Yes,
duty
I
or off
received a
duty
call
that
from
evening?
Sergeant Santiago.
I was off duty.
And how was it?
Did you get a call
that
to
you were
assist
off
an
duty? You got a
investigator
call
regarding
to
a
assist
shooting
him,
that
I guess,
occurred at the retreat at Twin
the
Lakes?
additional
Yes, I
investigator, or
received
how
a
did
call
that
from
come about?
Sergeant Santiago. Well, the
How was it,
sergeants within the
you were off
investigative
duty, you
unit
got called to
are
assist
on,
him, I
have an
guess,
on-call
the
status,
additional
and they take
investigator, or how
turns.
did that come
So,
about?
that particular week, sergeants within the
Santiago, who was
investigative
my
unit
supervisor
on,
for the
have an
narcotics unit,
on-call
was the
status,
on-call
and
sergeant
they take turns.
for any
So,
investigative call-outs.
That particular
And
week,
so he
Sergeant
called me.
Santiago, who is my
And were you assigned to
for the
assist
narcotics unit,
investigator
was the
Chris
on-call
Serena?
sergeant for
Yes, sir.
any investigative call-outs.
Was he the lead
And so
investigator?
he
Chris
called
Serena
me.
was the lead investigator, yes.
And were you
When
assigned
you were
to
called that
assist
evening, did
investigator
you
Chris
actually go to
Serena?
the crime scene
Yes,
itself,
sir.
that is, to retreat at Twin
Was
Lakes?
he the
or
lead
did you go
investigator?
elsewhere?
Chris Serena
I
was
did
the
not
lead investigator,
ever
yes.
go out to the crime scene
When
that
you were
night.
called
I
that
went straight to the
evening,
police
did you
department.
actually go to
And
the
were you
crime
requested
scene
by somebody to
itself,
go
that
to the
is,
Sanford
retreat
Police
at Twin
Department?
Lakes, or did you go
Yes, sir, I believe it was Sergeant
I did not
Santiago that asked me to
ever
go
go
there.
out to the crime scene that night. I went straight to the
And
police
for
department.
the purpose
And
of
were you
doing what
requested
by
by somebody
somebody
to
to
go
go to the Sanford Police Department?
I wasn't told, I
Yes,
believe,
sir,
until
it
I
was
got
Sergeant
there.
Santiago that asked me to go there.
So you were directed specifically
And
not to go to
for
the scene,
the
but to go to
purpose
the
of doing
actual
what at the
police
police
department?
Yes, I
wasn't
believe
told,
at that time I was
until I
already
got there.
told that
So you were directed
Zimmerman was
specifically not
already
to go
en
to the
route
scene,
to the
but
police
to go to
department. Of course, I didn't know
actual
his name
police
at the
department.
time. Yes, I
When you
believe at
arrived
that time I
the
was
Sanford Police
already
Department,
told
was George
that
Zimmerman already present there?
Zimmerman
Yes.
was already en route to the police
If you
department. Of course,
could,
I
do you
didn't know
see
his
George
name.
Zimmerman in the courtroom today? When you arrived at the Sanford Police Department, was George Zimmerman?
Yes,
is
I do. He's
that the
standing.
person that just stood up?
Yes, yes, sir.
If you could, do you see George Zimmerman in the courtroom
The
today?
record will so reflect. Yes.
And
Yes,
is
I do. He's
that the
standing.
person that just stood up? When you
Yes,
came
sir.
into contact with
Identify
defendant
the
George
witness,
Zimmerman, was he in an
The
interview room?
record will so reflect.
Yes, sir, George Zimmerman was in an interview room.
And were there any officers present there? When you came into contact
Not in
with
the same
defendant
room,
George
but in a
Zimmerman,
room
was
where
he
they
in an
could
interview
observe
room?
him. This particular Yes, sir, interview George room Zimmerman was in an interview is, room. got a
And were
two-way
there any officers
mirrored
present
glass
there?
where You can see into the room?
Not in the
But
same
he
room,
wouldn't
but
have been
in a
able to see
room
out
where
of
they
the
could
room,
observe him.
and
This particular
Officer
interview
Adam
room
Johnson
is
and
got a
Officer
two-way
Timmy Smith
mirrored glass
were
where
there
you can
on the
see
other
into
side of
the
the
room,
class watching.
but he wouldn't have
Yes,
been able to see out of the room. and
Briefly
Officer
describe the
Adam
interview
Johnson
room.
and
How big
Officer
would you
Timmy
say it is
Smith
about?
were there.
I would
on
say
the
it's
other side of the
maybe
class watching.
8 feet by 5 feet.
Briefly
I'm not really good at
describe the
measurement,
interview
so-
room.
so-
How
And is
big
there a
would you say
table
it
and
is?
chairs in the interview room?
Yes,
I
a
would
table
say it's
probably
maybe
similar to the size
8
of the table
feet
I'm
by
sitting at now.
5 feet.
I'm not really good at measurement.
Did you end up talking to the
And is there a
defendant, George
table and
Zimmerman?
chairs in the
Yes,
interview
I
room?
did talk to
Yes,
him.
a table probably
And
similar
was
to the
your
size of the
interview with
table
the
I'm sitting at
defendant,
now.
George Zimmerman, recorded in any way? Did you end up
Yes, it
talking
was.
to the defendant, George Zimmerman? Briefly tell us how it was
Yes, I
recorded.
did talk to him.
It was
about
recorded
And
on
was your
a,
interview
just
with
a
the defendant,
voice
George
recorder
Zimmerman,
that they give us.
recorded in any way, ma'am? Okay.
Yes, it was.
Does that room have
Can you
the
briefly tell us how it was
capability of
recorded?
video
it was
recording?
recorded on a,
It does.
just a,
And
voice
can you tell us
recorder
why
that they
it was
give us.
not videotaped?
Because I didn't know how to
Does that
activate
room
that
have the
system.
capability of video?
Now, even though by law,
It
an
does.
officer is not
And can you
required
tell us
to
why it was
inform a
not
person
videotaped?
being interviewed that they're
Because I
recording
didn't know
the
how
interview.
to activate
Did you
that
in
system.
fact inform the defendant that you were
Now, even though by
recording the
law, an
I did
officer is
inform
not
him, inform him
required
of that, and I
to
placed
inform a
also the
person
recorder
being
where he could
interviewed
see that it
they're
was being
recording the
recorded as well.
interview, did you in fact inform
Did you advise the
defendant
defendant, George Zimmerman, of his constitutional
I
rights
did
and
inform him,
what's referred to
inform him of
Miranda
that, and I
rights?
placed also I the did. recorder where he could
And
see
did
that it was
you use
being
a
recorded
form
as
in
well.
doing that, ma'am?
Yes, I
Did
did.
you advise
Ma'am,
the
I'm gonna show you
defendant,
what's
George
been introduced into
Zimmerman, of
evidence,
his
State's Exhibit
constitutional rights and what's
174, I
referred to
believe there's no
Miranda rights?
objection.
I did.
And did you use a
If I may
form
approach
in
the
doing
witness,
that?
Your Honor?
Yes, I did.
Ma'am, I'm gonna show you what's been introduced into evidence, State's Exhibit 174, I believe there's no objection.
you recognize said exhibit? If I may approach the witness, Your Honor?
I do.
What do you recognize State's Exhibit 174 to be, ma'am?
This is the Miranda warning card that I read from that night and that I
do.
signed as well as
What do you
George Zimmerman
recognize
signed that night.
State's Exhibit 174 to be, ma'am?
And was that,
This is the Miranda warning
process
card
of,
that I read from that
informing
night
the defendant of
and
his
that I
constitutional
signed as
rights
well
or
as
Miranda
George Zimmerman
rights
signed that night.
recorded as part of the
And
recording that you
was
took of the
that,
interview of the defendant?
process of,
Yes, the reading of the rights as well as
Informing
you can hear me
defendant of his
having me
constitutional
sign
rights
it.
recorded as part of the recording that you took of the interview of the defendant?
Yes, the reading of the rights as well as you can
Did you
hear me
ask the defendant
having
whether he
me
understood his
sign it.
rights, ma'am?
Yes, I did.
And did he indicate whether he did or not?
He said that he understood.
And did he agree to waive his rights and talk to you? Did you ask the defendant whether
He
he
did.
understood his rights, ma'am? Did
Yes, I
you
did.
ask him questions as
indicate
part of the
whether he did or
interview,
not?
and did he
He said that he
respond to your
understood.
questions? And did he agree to
Yes.
waive his rights and talk to you? At any time
did.
during the investigation, did you ask him
any
questions as part of the
in
order
order
to get him to make a statement?
respond
No, I did not.
At any time during the
Yes.
interview, did you promise? At any time during the investigation, did you threaten the
No, I didn't
defendant in
promise
any
him
way?
anything.
In your
In order
prior
to get him to make a
experience,
statement.
No, I
as
did
a
not.
police
At
officer
any
in
time
San
during
Francisco
the
Police
interview,
Department,
did
did
you
you
occasion
promise
come
him
in
anything in
contact
order
with
to get
people
him to
under
make a
the
statement?
influence
No, I
of
didn't promise him
alcohol and
anything.
or drugs?
In your prior experience,
Yes, very much.
as a
Did the
police
defendant
officer
appear
in
to
San
be under the
Francisco
influence of
Department,
alcohol and or drugs to the point where he was incapable of understanding what was going on?
I did not get any
Did the defendant
indication
appear
that
to
he was
be under the
any
influence of
anything.
alcohol and or drugs to the point where he was
When he
incapable
spoke to
of
you, did you
understanding
have
what
any
was going
problems
on?
understanding him when he
I
spoke to you?
did not
No, he
get
spoke
any
clearly.
indication that he was under any influence of anything.
When he spoke to you, did you have any
And
problems?
did he have any
understanding him
problems
when he spoke to
understanding you when you
No, he
asked him
spoke clearly.
questions?
He never said that he misunderstood anything I said to him.
When you came into
And
contact
did he
with
have
him,
any
did you
problems
notice some
understanding you when
injuries
you
asked him
Yes.
questions? Okay.
He never
And
said that he
did you discuss those with him, whether he needed any medical treatment
When you
or
came
not?
into contact with him,
Briefly,
did you
yes.
notice some injuries? And did he say he did need
Yes.
medical treatment?
And did you discuss those
He
with
said
him,
that
whether he needed any medical
didn't,
treatment?
from
or
what I
not?
recall, when I first walked into the room,
And did he say he did need
later on
medical
in the
treatment?
interview, he said he was not sure.
Okay, and
He
did you
said that he
discuss
didn't,
that with him
from
in
what I
terms of
recall, when I
providing
first
him an
walked
opportunity if
into
he
the
so
room.
desired to get medical treatment?
Later on in the
Yes.
interview, he said
And
he
did he
was not
decline
sure.
that?
Yes.
Okay, and did you discuss that with him in terms of providing
Did
him
he
an
complain
opportunity
of an
if he so
injury when you were
desired to get
speaking
medical
of
treatment?
like, my
Yes.
head is,
And did he
you know, just,
decline that?
I can't think, I'm in pain, I just can't think? Did he ever express that to you?
No,
Did
he
he
never said
complain of
those
an
things in
injury
that
when
way.
you were speaking of it, like, my head is, you know, just, I can't think, I'm in pain?
If
I
he had
just
done
can't
so,
think?
would you
Did
have
he ever
interrupted or
express that
stopped
to
the
you?
interview
No, he
and
never
and
said
had
those
him
things in that way.
checked out out in some way?
If he had asked at all for any reason, no matter how
If
he
he had
was
done so,
showing
would you
himself,
have
that he
interrupted
wanted
or
to go
stopped
to
the interview
hospital, I would
and
have
had him
made that
checked
happen.
out in some way?
If he had
Ma'am,
asked at all
when,
for any reason,
you came into
no matter how
contact
he
with him,
was
was that
showing
the
himself
evening of
that he wanted to
February
go to the hospital,
26th
I
of
would have
2012,
made
is
that
that
happen.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ma'am, when you came into contact with him.
And do you recall approximately what time you came into contact with him?
2012, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Probably somewhere between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, but that would be a guess.
And do you recall approximately what time you came into contact with him? And when you first came into contact
Probably
with the
somewhere
defendant,
between 8
you
o'clock and 9
described-
o'clock.
Did he have some
that would
blood
be a
on his
guess.
nose?
He had crusted blood underneath his nose.
And when you first
Did
came
he
into
also
contact
have some
with the
blood on the
defendant,
back of his
you
head?
described- Did he have
Yes,
some
that was
blood on his
actively
nose?
bleeding.
Okay. And did he use some
He had
tissues
crusted
to
blood underneath his nose.
stop that from bleeding?
Yes,
Did
we
he
have a
also have
tissue
some
box
blood on
on
the
the
back of his
table.
head?
In the interview room, and he was using those tissues.
Okay. And did he use some tissues to stop that from bleeding?
Yes, we have a tissue box on the table.
Your Honor,
in the
this time
interview
we'll
rooms, and he
formally
was using those
move into
tissues.
evidence. I apologize, let me make sure I've got the. State's Exhibit 178, which is the defendant's interview with Ms. Singleton, Officer Singleton. State's Exhibit 178, which is the defendant's
It'll come
interview
into evidence.
with Ms. Singleton, Officer Singleton.
An instruction in court may
178, I
address
believe
the
it's,
sum of
not
funds.
as to this one.
Okay.
That's correct.
It'll come into evidence.
There is an instruction in court may address the sum of funds.
Ma'am, you've had an opportunity to review the recording that was taken of the defendant, the audio recording, is that correct?
The interviews with myself, yes.
Ma'am, you've had an opportunity to review the recording that was taken of the interview. The interview itself is you
The interviews
asking
with myself,
Mr.
yes.
Zimmerman questions, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. The interview, the interview itself is you asking. During the interview that you conducted of Mr. Zimmerman, you had not been to the scene itself, to the
Yes.
shooting scene, is that correct?
No, I was not at the scene.
So you were not able to quiz him? During the interview that you conducted of Mr. Zimmerman, you had not been to the scene itself, to the shooting scene?
Yes, I essentially knew nothing going in to
No, I
speak to
was
him.
not at the scene.
What was the purpose in terms of interviewing him?
What he said, because
To get a
you were
statement
not
from
aware of
him.
the facts, I'm assuming.
Yes, I essentially knew nothing going in to speak to him.
What was the purpose in terms of interviewing him then?
To get a statement from him.
Okay, the date is February 22nd, 2012. It's Investigator Singleton. Sitting in an interview room at the Sanford Police Department with
Now,
February 22nd,
just to make sure the record, you stated on that February 22nd. In fact, Mr. Zimmerman corrected
Sitting in
you
an
and
interview room
pointed
at
out
the
that it was
Sanford
actually
Police
February
Department
26th, is that correct?
Yes, I misspoke. It was
To
February
make sure the
26th.
record, you stated on that February 22nd. In fact, Mr. Zimmerman corrected you and
George
pointed out that it
Michael
was actually
Zimmerman.
February 26th, is that
in
correct?
reference
Yes,
to
I
an event
misspoke.
that
It was
happened
February
at
26th.
2831 Retreat View Circle. I'm gonna read you George Michael Zimmerman, so you're here. In reference to an event that happened at 2831 Retreat View Circle. What's going on? You're in charge of the crime yet, but you are here. I'm gonna read you a Miranda rights myself. What really happened? You're here. And so I'm gonna ask to talk to you about it, like I give you Miranda warnings so that you understand time that you are here. You can't go until we. Okay, you have the right to remain silent. You don't have to talk to me. I'm gonna ask to talk to you about it, like I give you Miranda warnings so that you say can't be used as said. Okay, you have the right to remain silent. You don't have to talk to me. Okay? Anything you say can't be used against you in court. Meaning, if you say something that proves your guilt, we can use it to prove your guilt. Okay, you understand that? Okay. You have the right to have an attorney present now or at any time during questioning. You understand that? Yes, ma'am. Okay. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you without any cost. Okay. If you talk to me, you have the right to stop answering questions or speak to an attorney at any time. Okay. Do you understand these rights? Yes, ma'am. Okay. And do you want to talk to me? Yes, ma'am. Okay. What I need you to do here is put your signature and just date it. Yes, ma'am. Okay. And this is being recorded, this interview. Okay. 2/21? What did you say it was? Today is the 26th. I'm gonna sign right here. And I witness you sign this cord. And I'll put the case number later. Yes, I know part of it, but I'm not sure. Okay. I haven't been out there, okay? So I just want you to tell me.
When you say you haven't been out there, what were you referring to, ma'am?
To the crime scene.
Thank you.
Before this incident Do you live at this address here? No. Okay, so this address in your license that says 1874 Valleywood Way in Lake Mary, you no longer live there?
Correct.
Okay. Do you live in the complex or neighborhood where this occurred?
Yes.
Okay. What is your address?
1950.
This is the correct one?
Yes.
So you live at 1950 Retrieve View Circle. I'm just gonna keep quiet, and you tell me the story. You tell me what happened tonight, okay?
Just tonight?
Yeah, or whatever led up to this. Anything you want to tell me about what happened and why it ended up what it ended up to where this boy got shot. Okay.
The neighborhood has had a lot of crimes. My wife saw our neighbors get broken into, and she got scared.
Are you talking about the residents or vehicles?
The residents,
okay,
while it was occupied. So I decided to start a neighborhood watch program in my neighborhood.
Okay, what is the name of the neighborhood?
Retreat at Twin Lakes.
Is it the little two-story condos or
The townhouses.
Townhouses, okay. Retreat
at Twin Lakes.
Retreat at Twin Lakes, okay. Okay, you started a
neighborhood watch.
Okay.
Wendy Dorval, Sergeant Hertz, Officer Buchanan, and I'm the coordinator. And there's been a few times where I've seen a suspicious person in the neighborhood. We call the police, the non-emergency line, and these guys always get away.
What made them suspicious?
This gentleman in particular, I'd never seen him in the neighborhood. I know all the residents. It was raining out, and he was leisurely walking, taking his time, looking at all the houses.
Okay.
When I drove by, he stopped and looked at me.
Had you seen him before?
Never.
Never? Okay.
I know all the kids in my neighborhood, all the adults in my neighborhood. And like I said, it was raining, and he was just walking casually, not like he was trying to get out of the rain.
Tell us what happened right there.
Sergeant Santiago was still at the crime scene, and he had chirped my Nextel phone. And he wanted me to find out from George if there was, he wanted to find out from George Zimmerman and wanted me to ask him if there was any phone numbers or contact persons that he could locate or give information on to see if there was video surveillance of the gate as to which cars come through the gate.
Okay.
Been an interview. Yes.
Is that Sergeant Santiago asking you something, and that's why it's not clearly coming out on the recording?
Right, because it's coming into my phone and I have the phone to my ear.
Okay. And he's asking you if there's a tape or video at the gate as far as viewing the cars coming in and out?
Yes, he wants me to find out from George Zimmerman if he knows that information.
Okay.
Do you know if there's any tape or recordings of vehicles that come in and out of that neighborhood?
Last time they were down. The cameras
It
were
has
broken.
the ability, but you don't know if it's running.
Correct.
He says they do have video, but he doesn't know if it's working right now because last he knew it wasn't working. Do you know who the contact is for that video?
Leland Management in Orlando. And his name is Kent Taylor.
Okay. What are we talking about there in terms of contact? Somebody that be able to, well, tell me what you mean by that.
My question to George was if he knew somebody who could get that information that Santiago was asking for. Sergeant Santiago wanted to know who could he contact in order to find out how to get the surveillance from a camera if it existed.
So you're asking the defendant in terms of a contact person, so Santiago can contact that person?
Right, I guess he would assume that George would know, being part of the neighborhood watch, and he would know who to contact for that type of surveillance video.
Thank you.
Kent Taylor. You don't have the
I did my cell phone.
What is Mr. Zimmerman doing now? Actually looking through his cell phone, the defendant?
Yes, if at some point I go out of the room and I come back in and I give him the phone so that he can look up the phone number that Sergeant Santiago is requesting.
Okay, meaning the defendant's phone, Mr. Zimmerman's phone.
Yes, his cell phone.
Okay.
It's Leland Management. So for Leland Management in Orlando, the contact person is Kent Taylor, but he doesn't have the phone number on him.
When Sergeant Santiago asked you to find out the 43, what did he mean by that?
Get the information. 43 is just a 10 code for information. But I haven't gone out of the room yet, based on what I just heard.
Okay.
Sometimes they have you do this. Do you know where your cell phone is right now?
They took it from me.
With these officers? Okay. I'll be right back. Getting his phone number?
No.
Off your phone if you have it?
Now, at this point, are you asking the defendant to find or look in his phone and get the phone number that he just talked about?
Yes, I went and retrieved the phone, brought it back to the room, handed it to him, and asked him if he wouldn't mind looking up the phone number that was being requested.
Seven 781 1181. The HOA president might also know.
Okay. What's his name?
Don. D-O-N. It's 407 790 0054. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
What's going on now? Are you relaying that information to Sergeant Santiago?
Yes, I believe I walked out of the room and relayed that information to him through my next tail outside of the room.
So even though you walked out of the room, the recording was still going on?
Yes, the recorder remained inside the room.
these guys know the neighborhood very well. They would cut in between buildings and lose.
You're saying these guys, who are these guys?
The people committing the burglaries.
So you've seen more than one person, like, looking suspicious and doing these burglaries?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But you never had seen this guy prior to tonight, or you don't know?
I don't recall. I've called a few times. I think you guys probably have the records.
Okay.
I've probably called a half a dozen times.
Okay.
And this time, I was leaving to go to the grocery store, and like I said, I saw him walking in the neighborhood, in front of the same house that I had called the police before to come to, because this guy leaves his doors unlocked and stuff. And he was walking leisurely and looking at the houses, and so I just pulled my car to the side and I called the non-emergency line.
Were you armed at this point?
Yes,
you were already armed. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I called the non-emergency line and I just reported that there was a suspicious person in the neighborhood. The dispatcher or whoever answered the phone asked me where they went, and I said I wasn't sure because I lost visual of him when he went in between the houses. And he said, well, can you tell me what direction he went? And I said, not really. And then all of a sudden I see him circling my car. And then he goes back into the darkness. So
Do you remember, you pull out of your house and you're heading down the road as you're looking at him.
Yes, ma'am.
You're on the phone and he dips between two houses, is that what you mean?
Yes, ma'am.
Because you lose sight of him. Okay.
Correct. And then he comes back out and circles my car while I'm on the phone with the police.
Okay, is he saying anything to you?
I couldn't hear him. My windows were up.
Okay.
As soon as I saw him coming up, I rolled up my windows and I stayed on the phone with dispatch.
Okay. Your car was running,
Yes,
the lights were on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you knew somebody was in this car?
Yes, ma'am.
And is he walking completely around the car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And dispatch asked me where he went. I didn't know the name of the street that I was on.
So you'd come off your street and got into another street?
Yes, ma'am.
At some point,
That
okay.
goes in, cuts through the middle of my neighborhood.
Okay.
I didn't know the name of the street or where he went. So I got out of my car to look for the street sign and to see if I could see where he cut through so that I could tell the police.
So after you circled your car, he disappeared again?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Then dispatcher told me, where are you? And I said, I'm trying to find out where he went. And he said, we don't need you to do that. And I said, well, okay. He said, we already have a police officer en route. And I said, oh, all right. And I had gone through the dog walk where I normally walk my dog, and walked back through to my street, the street that loops around. And he said, we already have a police officer on the way. So I said, okay. They said, would you like a police officer to meet you? And I said, yes. And I told them where my car was and the make and the model. So I was walking back through to where my car was, and he jumped out from the bushes, and he said, what the fuck's your problem, homie? And I got my cell phone out to call 911 this time. And I said, hey man, I don't have a problem. And he goes, no, now you have a problem. And he punched me in the nose. At that point, I fell down. I tried to defend myself. He just started punching me in the face. And I started screaming for help. I couldn't see, I couldn't breathe. Then he started taking my
Are you
head.
still standing at this point?
No ma'am,
Okay.
I fell to the ground when he punched me the first time.
Okay.
It was dark, I didn't even see him getting ready to punch me. As soon as he punched me, I fell backwards into the grass. Then he grabbed me, he was wailing on my head, and then I started yelling help. When I started yelling for help, he grabbed my head and he started hitting my head into the... I tried to sit up and yell for help, and then he grabbed my head and started hitting it into the sidewalk. When he started doing that, I slid into the grass to try and get out from under him, and so that he would stop hitting my head into the sidewalk, and I'm still yelling for help. And I could see people looking, and some guy yells out, I'm calling 911, and I said, help me, he's killing me. And he puts his hand on my nose and on my mouth, he says, "You're gonna die tonight." And I don't remember much after that. I just remember I couldn't breathe, and then he still kept trying to hit my head against the pavement, or I don't know if there was a sign or what it was. So I just, when I slid, my jacket and my shirt came up. And when he said, "You're gonna die tonight," I felt his hand go down on my side, and I thought he was going for my firearm. So I grabbed it immediately, and as he banged my head again, I just pulled out my firearm and shot him.
Okay. And then what happened? Did you're both on the ground?
I'm
He's
on my
top
back,
of you?
he's on top of me.
Okay.
He's mounted on top of me. And I just shot him, and then he falls off, and he's like, "All right, you got it, you got it."
Does he fall to the side and he stays laying on the ground, or does?
I don't remember.
Okay.
My vision was blurry, and
You didn't feel him fall towards you? He somehow ended up to one side or the other, or you don't know?
I don't remember. I think when I shot him, it might have pushed him back, but I remember I didn't know what he was hitting. It felt like he was hitting me with bricks. So I remember once I shot him, I holstered my firearm and I got on top of him and I held his hands on because he was still talking. And I said, "Stay down, don't move." And then somebody comes out, and I couldn't see, there was a flashlight in my head, so I asked if it was a police officer. And he said no, it was a witness, but he was calling the police. And I said, "The police are on the way, they should be here already," because I had called.
Okay.
And he's like, "I'm calling the police." And I said, "I don't need you to call the police, I need you to help me with this guy." And then an officer shows up. Again, he had the flashlight, so I couldn't see him. And he asked me, "Who shot this guy?" And I said, "I did." And I immediately put my hands on top of my head, and I told the police officer where my firearm was.
Okay.
And then he handcuffed me and took my firearm.
Okay, after you shot him, he said, "You got me?"
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you got on top of him, did he say anything else?
He said, "Ow, ow."
And he was, okay. You said you had walked back there
Yes, ma'am.
to try to find out where he went. And you were already on the phone with dispatch at that point? Because you said you called them from your car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the whole time you were on the phone
Yes,
with
ma'am.
dispatch? Were you still on the phone with him when he jumped out and
No.
okay, you had hung up?
Yes.
Okay. Did someone else call before the shot? He said he was already calling, right? Or while he was hitting you, you said you heard someone say, "I'm calling."
Yes.
I'm calling. Okay. So someone else might have been on the phone
Yes, ma'am.
with dispatch while you were being beat up.
Yes, ma'am.
And you had never seen this guy before?
I don't recall. It's always dark. They always come around nighttime. And
What did he look like?
African American, early 20s, late teens. He was taller than me, so I'd say 6 footish, slender build.
Do you remember what he was wearing?
Yes, I gave him a description over the phone. A hoodie and either sweatpants or jeans.
It was all dark colored stuff?
No, the hoodie was gray and the sweatpants were maybe like a denim color, like stonewash denim.
What was his hairstyle? Did he have short
He
hair?
had
or
the
did he
hood
have
on.
dreads? So you couldn't see?
No,
Okay. All right. How's your head?
I can't feel it.
Okay, and who told you, you said when I came in here, they said someone told you you broke your nose. Who told you that? Who told you that? Okay, did you need to go to the hospital?
I don't know. They said I didn't, but I don't know.
Is this bump, I can't tell what's normal for you. Can you see?
I can't.
Like right here, does this, right here, does that look like a contusion there of some sort, or is that the normal shape of your head?
No, it's not normal.
Okay, because it looks swollen there. Can I see the other side? Yeah, I'm gonna get him.
Are you examining the sides of his head at that time?
I've stood up and come to his side of the table so that I can see all sides of his head.
Okay, the person who said, I'm calling for you. Did you recognize that person?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so you don't know if that was a resident or?
They were looking out of their back patio.
Okay, so it was somebody that was looking from a residence saying that
Yes,
they were
ma'am.
calling? Okay, did you see more than just that person, or?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so that person said, I'm calling.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Nobody came over to assist in pulling them off. And you were between two houses when this happened?
Behind the houses.
You were behind the houses?
It's a row of houses, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it was a row of houses, and you had gone back behind, and then you were on your way back
Yes, ma'am.
out. Okay. Was it one of the houses along the wall? I don't know when this
No.
happened, so.
No, would you like me to draw it?
Yeah, sure.
The neighborhood is kind of like a square, like this, and then there's a row of houses here. This is the wall, and there's houses here, and then there's another row of houses here, and this is houses. I parked my car here, the mailbox is here. He went through this dog walk here, and you can either go down the sidewalk here between this row of houses, or you can go straight through to this street. So this is asphalt. I'm sorry, my hands.
That's okay.
This is asphalt, and so I walked straight through to see if there was a street sign that I could tell dispatch where I lost sight of him at. And when I walked back, that's when he came out of the darkness, and I guess he was upset that I called the police.
So this is behind the house that he comes out of the darkness?
Yes,
Behind the
ma'am.
building? Okay. And you said there's some bushes or something that
Yes,
you may have came out of? Okay.
Because when I walked past, I didn't see him down here. So I walked through to make sure, I looked to make sure he wasn't there.
Right.
And then I walked straight through to see a street sign. And then when I came back, obviously he was waiting somewhere.
Okay. And where is your cell phone? Where was your cell phone? Had you already had it back in your pocket at that point, or did it get dropped, or what happened with your cell phone?
No, I had it in my hand. When I put it, they said, would you like the police officer to meet you? And I said, yes, my car's there.
And that's when they disconnected with you?
Yes, ma'am.
That's when they said, okay, they're on scene, okay.
Yes, ma'am. So I did. I put my cell phone away.
Okay.
And then when I walked back towards him, I saw him coming at me, and I went to grab my phone. I don't remember if I had time to pull it out or not.
Okay, you attempted to try to recall that?
To call the police.
Call the police, right.
911 this time, because the first time I called 911.
But you're not sure if you actually got it out of your pocket or not?
I don't recall.
Okay. And that's when he slugged you?
He just hit me, yeah.
And what did he say before that? You said he asked you like something about, you got a
He's
problem?
like, you got a problem, homie? And I said, I don't have a problem. And he said, now you have a problem.
Okay.
And that's when he hit me.
And he struck you in the nose first?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's what knocked you down?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you're saying this is behind the buildings though?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you sure, is it a patio that he's hitting? Because you said he's hitting your head on a sidewalk.
No, it's the sidewalk.
Okay, there's a sidewalk behind?
Yes,
the
ma'am.
buildings?
It's a
Okay.
dog walk.
Okay.
And this is a row of houses, and this is a row of houses, and this is the dog walk.
Okay.
So I walk back here.
So the dog walk is cement?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so he's hitting your head.
Yes, ma'am. As I went to sit up, then he grabbed me by the front of my head and started banging into the...
And that's when you can look either to your left or right and you can see this guy? And you're saying, help me?
I don't remember. I screamed, help me, probably 50 times as loud as I could.
Okay, but at some point you could visually see that there was someone
Yes, ma'am.
saying something to you from
Yes,
a
ma'am.
patio? Okay. Do you remember what that person looked like? Okay, and the police got there,
Yes, ma'am.
and you were holding him down,
Yes, ma'am.
and they asked you,
No, once the police got there, I got on my feet. Because there was another person that got there, I guess a resident. I couldn't see, he had a flashlight, so I thought it was a police officer.
and at that point you stood up and got off him?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then when the police got there, I was already standing up, and I put my hands on top of
So we're talking about seconds between the time you see the flashlight and the police show up, or was it a little bit?
It seemed a while, but I'm sure it was seconds.
Okay. And they put you at gunpoint?
I don't know. I had my back. I put my hands on my head and I turned my back to him immediately.
Okay. What were they saying to you, the police?
He said, who shot him? And I said, I did.
Okay. That's when you did this?
Yes, ma'am. And I said, I have my gun on my right side in my holster, my waistband. And he said, I know you do. He goes, but I have to handcuff you first. And I said, I just wanted to make sure, you know, I'm not going for my firearm. And he put my arms out and handcuffed me.
And then where did they take you?
Here.
They just put you right in the police car right away?
No, EMS put peroxide on my head. And I think they put peroxide on my face to get the blood off.
Okay. Is there anything else I haven't asked you or you haven't said that you think is important for me to know? Okay. And you said you're in charge of the neighborhood watch group? Okay. And you were just, but you weren't doing it that night, or is it that you were just going to the store, you said?
Yes,
right? Okay. And driving out and you happen to see this kid and you want to check out with him, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Make sure he's okay. Okay. Well, actually, you did the right thing. You called the police.
Yes, ma'am.
To have them check out. You just noticed it. Okay. Is that normally what you guys do when you see someone suspicious? You just call?
Yes, ma'am.
You don't try to make contact with them? Okay. All right.
Doing that interview, there was an indication, it appears that he was drawing something. Is that correct?
Yes, there was a pad in there, and he attempted to draw the location where it occurred.
Did you subsequent to that actually use a Google map to get him to actually draw on that to demonstrate exactly what happened?
Yes, it wasn't clear to me, and I was confused as to where it actually happened and how the neighborhood was set up. So I went and I got a printout of the Google map of the entire neighborhood and had him show me exactly what he was talking about using the map.
This is February 26, 2012. Again, I'm in with George Zimmerman in an interview room with the Sanford Police Department. You still have the right to remain silent? You have the right to an attorney and all this, all what I spoke to you earlier about. Would you still continue to talk to me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just want to ask you a few more questions.
Yes, ma'am.
This is the neighbor.
And this is when you've gotten a Google map?
Yes.
Okay. And tell us how you got that Google map. Everybody knows about Google, but you actually went on the computer.
I went on the computer and I typed Retreat View Circle, I believe is the search. And when it showed it, I printed the page.
Okay. All right. And in terms, did you actually use that to actually have him draw what's going on?
Yes, as he would tell me, I would have him make markings on the map itself with a pen to show locations he's referring to.
Okay.
We're talking about, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can you put an X on here where you first saw the guy?
Right about here.
Okay, right about there. Okay, and this is the entrance, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just highlight that. Okay, this is where you first saw him. Okay, and then you're driving. Where were you when you saw him there?
I was driving around here in this direction.
Okay, this is where your car was. Okay. Can you just write car right there? Okay. And then you saw him here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then where do you go from there? This is where you start. When did you start calling the police? Where are you?
I pulled in front of the clubhouse.
Okay. Did you pass him?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So he was here and you passed him and went over here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Put an X there. That's where. Just put 911 because that's where you were when you called 911.
Well, it was the non-emergency line.
Okay. Well, that's where you called the police,
Yes.
right? Okay. Okay. And then he's behind you. He's still over here, correct? Because you pass him.
Right.
Okay, you pass him, and this is where he's looking at the houses. Okay. And then, where do you go when you realize, you said he comes and he circles your car?
No, ma'am. I lost contact of him as I was trying to get through because you have to...
So does he continue past you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so he continues past you and you lose sight of him over here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so just draw an arrow where he continues to pass you.
He continues to pass me through here, and then he goes down here. You want me to...
And then he goes somewhere here where you can't see him?
Correct.
So just go to about where you think he might have been to where you lose sight of him.
He started going here and then behind these houses.
Okay, and you can see that from here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then when he gets behind the houses, you lose sight?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you said at some point he comes back and circles your car? Has he already done that?
He looked into my vehicle,
Okay.
but he didn't circle it at that point in time.
Okay, when does he come, you're still in the car talking to 911, right?
I'm trying to get through.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And at some point you said he comes back?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you lose sight of him back here and then he returns?
I know. I drive my car up here.
Okay, so move your vehicle up to there.
Yes, ma'am. Right here.
Okay, put car. Just draw an arrow from where you were to where you ended up.
There
Okay.
to there. And that's where I parked.
Okay, that's where you parked. Okay. You park here, and then, is that when he comes and circles your car?
Yes, ma'am. It might have been closer in between here, these houses.
Okay, well, you can move it.
Oh,
Just move it.
right around there.
You might have run around here, okay. We'll just, okay. We're gonna X this one out, because it's not where you meant. You meant that you came around here and ended up here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you ended up here, and then, is that when he circles your car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. He comes out from where?
I don't know.
Okay, all of a sudden you just notice he's circling your car.
Yes, ma'am.
So he's circling your car.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you still on the phone?
Yes, ma'am.
With dispatch? Okay. Are you giving them a description or anything?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Where does he go where you lose sight of him again?
He walked back into the darkness here,
He went there? Okay.
and sorry.
He walks back into here.
Yes, ma'am.
Does he make the turn or does he go?
I didn't.
You don't know. By the time he gets here, you can't see him.
Correct.
Okay. And you're still in your car?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
you're watching him walk away?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then what happens?
The dispatcher asked me what direction he went on and exactly what address I was at.
And this is when you don't realize what street you're on because you're on the
Correct.
center street and you live on the outside.
Correct.
Okay. So you're trying to figure out what street you're on. Okay. So you see him go here, and then so what do you do to try to?
I got out of my vehicle to look at this house's address and see if there was a sign there.
Okay.
There wasn't.
Okay.
So I walked through the dog walk to see if there was a sign here or an address that I could make out easier.
Okay. And then what happens?
The dispatcher asked me if I'm out of my car, and I said yes. And they said, "Do you know what direction he went in?" I said, "No." And they said, "Are you following him?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't know where he went."
Okay. But you continue straight on the sidewalk
Yes,
go to
ma'am.
this side.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am, all the way through.
And then what happens when you get here? You decide that you still don't know where you're at?
I still didn't know where I was at, but I was able to give the dispatcher a description from the clubhouse.
Mhm.
I said they come straight in past the clubhouse, and my car is right here.
Okay.
And
Is your car running or you've shut it
It's
off?
shut
You've
off.
locked it? Okay. So you're just parked here. You follow him. It doesn't matter so much. So you walk here, and when you get here, you realize, okay, I'm just going to go back to my car. Is that what happens, or?
no, the dispatcher says, "Would you like a police officer to still come out?" Because I said I don't know where he went.
Okay.
Because he asked me for what direction they went in,
Okay.
and what road, and I said I don't know where he went. And they said, "Well, do you still want an officer to meet you?" And I said yes. And they said, "Well, where do you want them to meet you?" And I said, "At my car."
Okay.
So I start walking back towards my car.
Okay. Is this all dark in here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, there's no lighting back here anywhere unless it comes from someone's house? Is that
Correct.
how it works? Okay. And is it all dark down here so
Yes,
you can't
ma'am.
see anything down
Unless
here?
there's patio lights on.
Okay, so at what point and where from what bushes does he jump out?
It was somewhere around here.
Did you know is there bushes along this walkway or where are the bushes?
There are hedges around the sides and the back of the buildings.
Okay, so you think it's up here somewhere where the T is, where he jumps
Yes, ma'am.
out? Okay, do you remember you were walking this way? Did he jump out in front of you from somewhere, or did he come up behind you? Or do you remember?
I don't recall.
Okay, but he was, from what you guess, he's somewhere hiding at this T with the bush,
Yes, ma'am.
in the bushes when he jumps out. Okay. And then where do you end up when you guys are on the ground and after this is all happened? Where? You know, do you
He
even know?
punched me in the face, and I fell backwards, and I don't even know
You
where
just know
I
you're somewhere in this area.
ended up. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, when the police took you, they took you
Back up this.
back up this way. Okay. And when that man was standing there with a flashlight, do you remember what building he was from?
No, ma'am.
Do you remember what building you saw when you said you saw somebody?
This one.
You saw somebody over here
Yes,
when you were hollering for help, and the
Yes,
guy
ma'am.
says, "I'm calling."
Yes,
Okay, this is the building where you see somebody. Okay. Okay, but he jumps out of bushes somewhere in this area.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, what kind of gun was it?
Mine?
Yours.
A Kel-Tec 9mm.
Celtic 9mm.
Do you think I can have water?
Oh yeah, I'll get you another one. Or you can have soda or coffee or anything.
Water.
Okay.
Thank you.
You don't need to use the restroom yet?
No.
Okay.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Ma'am, I'm going to show you what's been introduced into evidence, I believe without objection, 176. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 176, ma'am?
Yes, this is the Google map I brought to him that he wrote on.
And is that the Google map that you were using in the last interview with the defendant?
Yes, this is the same map.
Okay. Your Honor, may the court assist us by dimming the lights a little bit? I apologize. Ma'am, I'm showing you State's Exhibit 176. Do you see it there?
Yes.
Okay. And is this the Google map you used in having the defendant describe his actions and where he came into contact with a person we now know as Trayvon Martin?
Yes, this is the same map.
All right. And let's go over a few things if we can. I'm pointing to, appears to be a pink right here. What is the significance of that? Does it say car on there?
If it says car, that's where he says his car was when he first noticed Trayvon.
All right. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to blow up part of this Google map so that jurors can see it. Okay. So right here I am pointing to where it says the word car. That is pink. He's actually writing that in, or are you writing that in, or how does that progress?
He wrote that down, and
Okay.
I may have put the direction of the arrow,
Okay.
showing the direction that he was going.
The defendant was driving? Okay. The next, what appears here is something in pink and an X. What is the significance of that?
That is supposed to indicate where Trayvon was when he first saw him.
Okay. So the defendant is telling you he is driving this way, and he comes into contact and sees Trayvon Martin, the victim, right here where the X is?
Yes, that's where he says he sees him first.
Okay, all right. In terms of using this map, I see what appears to be a line going this way. Tell me the significance of that.
Okay, the line that leaves the car shows the route of the car, and the line that leaves the X shows the route of where he says Trayvon passed him and then went behind the first set of houses there.
Okay.
The houses to the right of the clubhouse, you see three. They're at the top of the T.
Right here?
Yes.
Further down here? Okay. Let's go back, if we could, to right here. Is this what you understood to be the clubhouse area that I'm circling right here?
Yes.
Okay. There appears to be here an X and some lines right here. Do you see that?
Yes, I believe it should say 911. That's where his car went, and
Okay.
he said he called 911 there.
May I approach the witness again? I'm going to give you the actual exhibit, and we have that up there, but just to make sure. So that is actually 911. Just remember I have that. So tell us again the significance of this right here that I'm circling, this part of this exhibit.
Okay, you'll see from the first place he says the car is, there's a line that shows him going there. And then instead of putting car at that location, because he said he remained in his car, we used 911 to show that's where he was when he was in his car and he called 911.
Okay. Now, on this exhibit, are there two lines, one going this way and the other one going the same way, but there are two lines going parallel at that point?
Yes, the X indicates Trayvon Martin, the first X, over all the way to the left.
All the way over here?
And then it's supposed to be a line showing the X stops at the car at some point where he says he looked into the car.
He being Trayvon Martin looked into the defendant's car?
That's what George Zimmerman is explaining happens, yes.
Okay, okay, go ahead.
And then when I asked him, draw now a line where you say after Trayvon leaves you, where he ends up when he's out of your sight. and that's the arrow that goes straight and then ends up behind the houses right there.
Okay,
If you go up a little bit that line, he ends up, it's right behind the house where he says that's where he loses sight of him. He follows the street around and goes
okay.
there.
And that's where the defendant claims that he lost sight of Trayvon Martin.
Yes,
Okay. Now, you also have something here, and I can't make out what that is, but it's pink and it's some kind of writing there. Tell me the significance of that, if you could.
you'll see how the car where it was 911 leaves, this mic's not acting right, leaves the clubhouse. I asked him to draw where he goes from there. He initially wrote that he stopped there, but then he scribbled that out to change where the car ends up a little bit more forward, where it
Okay.
says car,
Right here?
if that's where it says car.
So he originally
Yes.
had it here, and then it moves here. What happens over here?
The circle means that's where he said Trayvon circled his car.
So where that circle is in the X, that is where the defendant claims that Trayvon Martin came up and circled his car. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us what, in terms of the defendant is telling you using this Google map, what he claims occurred after that.
Trayvon leaves that area and goes straight into the T, at the top of the T. He doesn't
Am
know.
I pointing it out here this way, this route?
Yes.
Okay.
He says that at the top of the T at the intersect, he doesn't know if Trayvon continued straight or if he went down.
Okay,
Between the houses.
I'm gonna point this cursor and tell you I'm going red. The defendant's claiming he didn't know if Trayvon Martin went this way or went down this way?
Yes, that was my understanding.
Okay, what else does the defendant then claim?
That he got out of the car to locate a house address so that he could better tell dispatch where he was. This is all on the tape though, so you can hear exactly what he
Right.
said.
Right, so the defendant is claiming he got out of the vehicle right here to try to get an address so he could tell dispatch where he was at?
Yes.
Okay, what happens to then the defendant? And the reason I'm asking is it appears to be lines going this way. If you could tell us the significance of that.
It's probably just a second line. He says that he goes all the way across the T to the other side.
Okay, stop me if I'm going too far. Does he claim he's going like this,
Yes.
all
Yes.
the way to this street?
Yes.
Okay. What does the defendant claim occurs when he gets over to the street that circles the whole retreat of Twin Lakes?
I believe that's where he says he lost him. He's telling dispatch he no longer knows where he is.
Okay.
He says that when he was there is when he no longer knew for sure which direction Trayvon had gone
Okay.
and thought maybe he was hiding.
Meaning he didn't know whether Trayvon Martin went this way or whether he went this way right here, one of those two?
Yes.
Okay, what does the defendant then claim at this point?
He discusses with dispatch whether or not the police should still come to the scene, and it's agreed that they will.
Okay, what else does the defendant claim as to what occurred?
He begins to walk back to the vehicle, which would mean he has to go past the intersect of the T again to go
Okay,
back to where he
am I
parked.
going the right way?
Yes.
Okay, stop me whenever he says something else happened.
He says it happens at the intersect of the T, a little bit past it.
Right here?
Yes.
Okay, what does the defendant claim happens there?
That Trayvon approaches him. He's not sure exactly where he came from.
Okay. In the interview that you conducted of Mr. Zimmerman, the defendant, he said something, he came out of the bushes or something. Were you trying to, using this Google map, determine or have him point out where it was that he claims the victim came out of?
Right, because in some of the areas you can see bushes, but I couldn't particularly see them in that area, so I was trying to figure out what he was attempting to say.
Okay. What happens then?
He says that's when Trayvon approaches him and said what he said on the tape.
Okay, all right.
About
All right. You have, it appears an X is drawn right here.
that is the location that he said that when he was calling for help and saw somebody at a residence, he indicated that was the area that he had seen the person from a residence that would be located in that area.
Okay. Ma'am, you've conducted an interview, a recorded interview, then you conducted a second interview using the Google map. At this point, then, do you take additional steps regarding your interview of the defendant? Specifically, do you give him paper for him to write out a written statement?
Oh, yes. I had him fill out a statement form. I
Thank you, Your
just
Honor.
explained to him as best he could to explain everything he had told me in the interview, to be very detailed as to what he told me and try to put that in writing.
Now, in terms of the written statement, did you actually sit with him and go, okay, this is not right, change this or all that? Or how did that occur? Did you leave him alone, or were you in there with him telling him, you gotta write this, you gotta write this, or how did that proceed?
No, when I gave him the paperwork to write the statement, I left the room, and when I came back, he was done, and I had him sign them. I didn't read them, and I turned them over to Investigator Serena.
All right, and when you say you actually gave him paper, approach the witness, Your Honor? You're going to show State's Exhibit 175, that's previously been shown to counsel, and I believe there's no objection.
Yes, thank you.
Let me show you State's Exhibit 175. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 175?
I do. This is the statement that George Zimmerman wrote that night.
Okay.
And I witnessed.
And I believe, is that 4 actual pages?
I believe it was 4, but I'll check. Yes, it's 4.
And when you say 4 actual pages, what do you mean by that in terms of, and yet you actually witness, what do? You, every page you kind of write your
Right,
name?
I don't mean that I witnessed him filling these out. I witnessed that he signed, and that is his signature on each page. And they swear to it, that you affirm that everything you wrote in the statement is true, and they say yes, and they sign each one, and that's what I'm witnessing.
Okay. So he actually signed each page?
Yes. And I did as well.
I'm sorry, you did as a witness too?
Yes.
All right, ma'am, and let me do this. I apologize, may I approach the witness again? Let me leave you the exhibit itself, 175. I gather the pages are numbered in some way, some fashion, at the bottom?
Yes. Down at the bottom it says 1 of 4, so the second should say 2 of 4, and he just fills out the information it's asking for.
Okay. And that would indicate what? His name?
Name, address, date of birth, social security number, phone number, city, DL number, or driver's license number.
Take that down.
How can I clear it?
Yes.
Ma'am, I'm going to go into the actual written part of the exhibit. First part here. This is his handwriting, the defendant's handwriting, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and if you could go ahead and read what he wrote.
In August of 2011, I can't read with the lights down.
Oh. Can you read it from over there? It's going to test it's an eyesight test.
It's not good.
Okay.
Although I do wear contacts, they're not very helpful sometimes.
Okay. I think jurors can see that, hopefully. Okay, go ahead.
All right, in August of 2011, I don't know what it says there, my something house.
Neighbors?
Okay, my neighbor's house was broken into while she was home with her infant son. The intruders attempted to
Attack?
attack her and did. However, SPD reported to the scene of the crime, and the robbers fled. My wife saw the intruders running from the home and became scared of the rising crime within our neighborhood. And I and my neighbors formed a neighborhood watch program. We were instructed by SPD to call the non-emergency line if we saw something suspicious, and 911 if we saw a crime in progress.
Okay, let me interrupt you a second. How do I go back and then just go to the second part? Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Tonight I was on my way to the grocery store when I saw a male approximately 5'11" to 6'2", casually walking in the rain, looking into homes. I pulled my vehicle over and called the SPD non-emergency phone number. I told the dispatcher what I witnessed, and the dispatch took note of my location and the suspect. I think it says possibly fled.
Okay, and now the word suspect, that's his word. Or will you tell him to put certain words to describe the person we now know as Trayvon Martin?
No, I didn't tell him any words to use. I told him to tell me to put in writing what he had already explained to me, and to be as detailed as he could.
Okay, let me stop you a second. A place for him to sign and a place for you to sign as a witness, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think we're going to go to page 2, but give me a second to catch up to you. Okay. Page 2, the top part reads the same. He's just got his name, and then I'm going to highlight the first part. If you could, go ahead and read. I apologize.
You want me to begin?
I'm sorry. Yes,
Okay.
please.
In a darkened area of the sidewalk, as this dispatcher was asking me for exact location, the suspect emerged from the darkness and circled my vehicle. I could not hear if he said anything. The suspect once again disappeared behind.
Could that be between?
Possibly.
Okay.
Between some of the houses. The dispatcher once again asked me for my exact location, and I could not remember the name of the street. So I got out of my car to look for the street sign. The dispatcher asked for a description and the direction the suspect went. I told the dispatcher.
Hold on one second. Sorry, just getting. Okay, go ahead. I apologize.
I told the dispatcher I did not know, but I was out of my vehicle looking for a street sign and direction the suspect went. The dispatcher told me not to follow the suspect and that an officer was en route. And I headed back to my vehicle. When I headed back to my vehicle, it's as I headed back to my vehicle, the suspect emerged from the darkness and said, "You got a problem?" I said, "No." The suspect said, "You do now." I can't figure out what that last word is that you wrote.
All right.
You do now and
Okay.
looked, maybe?
Okay. All right.
It maybe says and looked.
All right. We're going to move on to page 3, but let me just stop you before you read that, and we're going to highlight. Go ahead. The first part. Again, he uses the word suspect to refer to Trayvon Martin. Have you uttered those words, or have you informed him in any way that's the word he's supposed to use to refer to Trayvon Martin?
No.
Thank you. Go ahead, page 3.
We finished off and looked and tried to, I guess he's trying to say I looked and tried to find my phone to dial 911. The suspect punched me in the face. I fell back toward, oh gosh.
You said backwards?
I fell backwards onto my back. The suspect got on top of me. I yelled help several times. The suspect told me, "Shut the fuck up," as I tried to sit up. Right. The suspect grabbed my head and slammed it into the concrete sidewalk several times. I continued to yell help. Each time I attempted to sit up, the suspect slammed my head into the sidewalk.
Let me stop you a second. Hold on, sorry. I'm trying to catch up here. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
My head felt like it was going to explode. I tried to slide out from under the suspect and continue to yell help. As I slid, the suspect covered my mouth and nose and stopped my breathing. At this point, I felt the suspect reach for my now exposed firearm and say, "You gonna die tonight, motherfucker." I understood my firearm.
Could that be unholstered? Or whatever you...
Yes, that would make more sense. Unholstered my firearm in fear of my life. I unholstered my firearm in fear for my life, as he had assumed.
Could that be assured?
You think it says what?
I can't spec it.
Okay.
Whatever. I believe the word is assured, A-S-S-U-R-E-D, but...
As he, I don't know if it's assumed or assured, he was going to kill.
All right, before you get to page 4, we got to pull it up.
Okay, now I've seen the whole sentence, maybe I can figure out what it says.
Okay.
My life as he assured he was going to kill me.
Okay.
And fired one shot into his torso. The suspect sat back, allowing me to sit up, and said, "You got me." At this point, I slid out from underneath him and got on top of the suspect, holding his hands away from his body. And another...
An onlooker?
Yes, an onlooker appeared and asked me if I was okay. I said no. He said I was calling 911. I said, "I don't need you to call 911, already called them. I need you to help me restrain this guy." At this point, SPD officer arrived and asked, "Who shot him?" I said I did, and I placed my hands on top of my head and told the officer, where on my person my firearm was holstered. The officer handcuffed me and disarmed me. The officer then placed me in the back of his vehicle.
And you signed that last page also, like you had the prior
Yes.
4 pages?
All of
Prior
them.
3 pages? Okay. Now, the defendant continuously refers to Trayvon Martin, the person we now know as Trayvon Martin, as a suspect, correct?
He did in the statement.
In that written statement, in the prior statements, he did not. The prior audio statements, he didn't refer to him as a suspect, did he?
No, he did not refer to him as a suspect in anything but this.
Okay, all right. And when police officers are talking about a person they suspect of doing a criminal, of being a criminal or committing a crime, do they refer to them as suspect?
Yes, we do. If we suspect them of a crime, they're a suspect.
Okay. Well, I don't know if now would be the time to take a recess or.
Time to recess for lunch. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to recess for lunch, and while you're getting your notepads to put face down on the chairs, I'm going to remind you that during the lunch time, you're not to have any discussions amongst yourselves or with anybody else about the case. You're not to read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case. You're not to use any type of electronic device to get on the internet to do independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology. And finally, you're not to read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case. Do I have your assurances that you will abide by these instructions? Okay, we'll be back at 1:30. So please fold your notepads down and follow Deputy Jarvis to the jury. Yes. Officer Singleton, you're free to go for lunch and be back at 1:30, but please remember that you're still on the witness stand, so you cannot discuss your testimony with anybody, including the lawyers, and that means what you have testified to or what you will testify to, okay? We'll see you at 1:30. Is there anything else that we need to take up before we recess for lunch? Court is in recess until 1:30.